Okay, welcome to our workshop this afternoon. This workshop is entitled Carrying Hope and Balancing Reality, a caregiver workshop on how to be brave enough to walk out your front door and experience the world with your Dravet warrior. So on your table, as Aaron said, there is a note catcher. And we will be interacting with this note catcher as we go through our workshop today. You'll also have an opportunity to chat with the people at your table and come up with other ideas. And we're going to break our session into 3 parts. So let's get started. When a person or a family begins the journey of having children, they are each given a metaphorical backpack. It is a container to carry everything for their family as they set foot on the journey called parenthood. They shoulder the responsibility of carrying that pack. All of the packs are unique with their own weight, their own color, material, and style. Preemptively, the backpack gets filled with parenting books, prenatal visits, your standard issue first aid kits, and sometimes, if you're lucky, something super fancy like a Swiss Army knife. Then you go all of the intangible things, the hopes for adventures you'll go on, the dreams for what the child will be, the joys on the trail ahead. Then the baby arrives, time passes, and what you carry in the pack changes. What you need changes depending on the terrain. You add things, remove things, adapt things, mend rips, small rips and boo-boos. And that is when you're on the well-groomed trail, well-traveled trail of parenting. But what happens when Dravet happens? What happens when even that fancy Swiss Army knife doesn't work? What happens when you come upon a trail that is so forked, so ominous, that in an instant you realize that everything in your pack is not even close to being what you will need as a parent? And the weight of the pack can feel so heavy that you feel cemented to the spot. Well, it is our hope that through this workshop, you will find something that will help you adapt what is already in your pack, or find the courage to put something new in and take a brave new step. Did that switch? No, that went back to... Whoops, backwards. There we go. Okay. Thanks for your patience.
It's our hope that by the end of today's workshop, you will gain tips and tricks on how to tell your story to increase courage, that you'll discover new tools to add to your backpack as you look at journeying beyond your homes. And many of you have done this because you're here with us today, and that should definitely be applauded. But we also hope that you, by the end of today's workshop, that you'll examine gradual adjustments to your routine to help facilitate ease and confidence. Truly, we hope that you will feel empowered to try something new. Before we go any further, let me introduce today's presenters and panelists. I am Erin Riollo, your Family Network Liaison. This is Austin Watson, your Dravet Foundation Family Network Coordinator. And we have Rich Maxey, who is our Family and Caregiver Engagement Coordinator. We also have some wonderful panelists today, each a parent to a patient with Dravet syndrome, as well as a Family Network ambassador. I'm pleased to introduce Morgan Turpin from California, Aaron Frost from North Carolina, okay, and Melissa O'Brien from Alaska, and Brian Wilson from Colorado. Before we launch into our sessions, take a look at the self-assessment on your thought catcher. On the spectrum of comfortability of leaving your home with your Dravet warrior, where do you fall? Take just a moment to rate yourself and your family. And raise your hand if you do not have a thought catcher.
Thank you. So taking the time to reflect is really the starting point of where you are in your own personal journey as a caregiver for someone with Dravet. So I want to get started in our first session, which is session 1, bravery, courage, and vulnerability. Now that you've had a second to reflect on where you are right now, we want to dive into ways that you might add a little hope to your pack. We know the saying that bravery is not the lack of fear, but acting in spite of the fear. But it goes beyond that. Limiting bravery to that definition eliminates the understanding that risks are involved with being brave. Living with Dravet is a daily exercise in being brave. And the risks with stepping out of your front door with Dravet is enormous. It is a leap, a jump, and it takes an immense amount of courage and vulnerability. Bravery is not a linear path, in the same way that grief is not a linear path. There are times in our journey where taking a walk into the backyard to play is absolutely out of the question. There were times in our family where we actually moved to a larger home and a smaller yard because our son could not play outside for more than 5 minutes without having a GTC. And yet other times where we were willing to take the risk and even travel. There are still some days that they're just bad days. Days we can't even go to the grocery store. Bravery is a path with switchbacks and rock slides and down trees and detours, and sometimes you've lost the trail entirely. But the more you walk the path of bravery, the more hope you find along the way. As you go, you can pick up that hope and put it in your pack, and that hope acts like a balloon, lightening the load of that pack. Next, we want you to tell your story. Telling your story is one way that you can better find the signposts around you on that trail. When you tell your story, the number one rule is to be authentic. Secondly, is to know your audience. Not everyone needs to know everything. Who are you talking to? Is it a new teacher? Is it a coach? Is it a flight attendant? Is it a caregiver or a camp counselor? What are the key bullet points you need to tell them? Is it meds? Is it treatment plan? Is it even the history of Dravet syndrome? What is the goal for telling them this story? Is it to teach them when to use rescue medication? Or is it to share your warrior's favorite motivators for getting things done? For our family, we have devised a script for certain situations so that I can quickly convey the message and information that the person I'm speaking to needs to know. There is an inherent risk with telling your story. When you tell your story, you immediately become vulnerable. And being vulnerable does not come without risks. You have to put trust in the others that you are talking to, that they will honor you, listen, and respond in a positive way. And as you look at going out your front door, it may be that you have to actually trust others to also care for your child. No one is ever going to love or care for your child in the same way that you do, or the same way that I take care of my son. But I can't care for my son alone. I just can't. And I have to ask for help, and I have to ask for accommodations. I have to be brave enough to ask, even if I think the answer will be no. There are only ever 2 answers to every question: the one you want and the one you don't. But if you don't ask the question, you'll never really know the answer. And even if that answer is the answer that you don't want, well, then maybe it's an opportunity to then come back together and then work together as a team in sort of a negotiation of give and take to get the accommodations that you need, that you would be happy with, that they can also provide. BetterHelp.com says that building trust happens when you combine the understanding of motives, when you have a common purpose, and when there is shared competence. If you don't talk to people, if you don't share your story, if you don't ask questions, how will you build that trust? How will you discover their motives? How will you find common purpose? And how will you help to assess or even grow their own competence without being brave? Ultimately, the braver you are, the easier it is to hope. So with that being said, we're going to go into this next session. And the way we're setting up these sessions is how we're going to go through each section of this presentation. So we're going to go on, and before we move on to our moderated questions, I want to first ask our panel to very quickly introduce themselves, your name, location, region, the age of your Dravet child, and if you're willing, where you fell on the spectrum. Number 6. Talking to it.
Hello, hello. There we go. Hello, I am Morgan Turpin. I am a West Coast ambassador. I live in San Diego, California, with my family. I have a 12-year-old son who has Dravet, and I also have a 9-year-old daughter and 3 dogs. Just feel like adding that. I fell in We Will Travel Domestically. That's where we're at. And I just want to add, Aaron and I said to each other on the side that we have been in every single one of these buckets so far, except for The World is Our Oyster. We haven't got there yet, but it doesn't mean that we won't get there. And I just quickly wanted to add that part of what helped me move through these buckets is seeing other people share their stories. So even if you're not there right now, if you feel even the tiniest bit of inspiration from us sharing our experiences, that makes it all worth it. Thank you.
Hey guys, my name is Erin Frost. I'm the Southeast Region Ambassador, and we live in North Carolina, my husband Justin and I. My daughter Mia is 16. If you haven't met her, you probably will before the end of the conference. Mia the mayor. She's 16, and my daughter Hannah's here as well. She's 15. We also have 3 dogs. Lots of doggies. And yeah, I was going to also add what Morgan had said about the different, on the spectrum, that we've been on all of them and have gone backwards and forward, and, you know. And also, since being at 16, you know, we've been through a lot of, you see her now, how she is, and she wasn't like that for a very long time. So I'm very open to share her earlier years stuff and what we dealt with as well, because I feel like that's really important. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Melissa O'Brien. I am a West Coast ambassador from Alaska. My son Owen is our warrior, and he is 11. We have 4 boys, 22, 21, 11, and 8, so we have quite the gamut of children. We also have been at every stage in this. And the one that we're not, sorry, I was getting feedback. The one that we're not comfortable with yet is The World is Our Oyster. But we've gone backwards in this spectrum. We've gone forwards. We've had bad experiences and good experiences in each one, but there's a comfort level for all of us, I think.
Hi, I'm Brian Wilson. I'm one of the Mountain Region ambassadors. I live in Denver, but I'm originally from the best state of the Union, New Jersey, that's right. So my daughter Vivian is 13 years old now. Never thought we'd see that day. She's a teenager, but she's doing well. We have gone everywhere up to travel domestically. The one thing I will say that the driving for a few hours and traveling domestically is probably not easy. Not even easy if you have regular kids. If you do have any neurotypical kids, you know what a pain they can be on any kind of trip. Obviously, you add the complications of Dravet syndrome to it, but it's more about for us at least when we do take those trips, it's about accomplishing them Not necessarily to go to have fun. It's more about we got out, we didn't let us stop us, right? We're doing things that other families did, and we know they're having a tough time on their own with their neurotypical kids. We just have, a kid will want to sit in the park and rip up grass all day instead of go play on the rides. But we normally hover around school, but we try to push ourselves to get to those others. Never did anything outside the country with her, though.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that introduction to yourselves. So I'm going to jump into some moderated questions. These are questions that our team has derived just to kind of get the conversation started. So to my panelists, I would love to know, when you shared your story with a stranger, one, why did you share what you did? Who did you share it with? And what was their response? Does anyone want to take that one?
Right? I guess it's the New Jersey guy. Oftentimes, nowadays when we share the story, it's often because we're out in public and people will ask. Sometimes we like taking Vivi to the park because she likes to play in the mulch or the sand in the park. Doesn't go on the swings or anything. But the first type of people who will come up, there'll always be a kid. A little kid will come up and ask if she wants to play. So I just try to, in kid terms, explain how she doesn't really know how to play with kids, and if they ask why not, you try to keep it kid level. Oh, her brain's different, right? Sometimes parents will ask, and usually at this point, 13 years in, we always just give a straight answer. Oh, she has a rare disease, it's these kind of complications. I don't try to hide or sugarcoat it. I also don't try to look for sympathy when I do it. I just answer it matter-of-factly. I think most people are familiar. One of the things I think our community has going for us is that most people are already very familiar with autism, and a lot of our kids have autistic behaviors. So the looks we might get aren't as common or outlandish because that autism community has already spread enough awareness and people are used to that. The only thing that ever bothered me with sharing the story, especially in the early days, was when, oh, my daughter has seizures or whatever. And a well-meaning person will say, oh, I'm sure they'll grow out of them. I had a cousin or whoever who had them when they were little. And you try to explain, and they're just trying to be positive. They're trying to give you some hope. I had to quickly learn that their heart was in the right place and just let it go. Like, oh, well, hopefully that'll happen. Right? So it does become on you to move on because you don't have to make a point of it. If it is a close friend or relative or a neighbor, obviously we try to explain it a bit more, but for a casual run-in of somebody, we just let them say what they want and move on.
Yeah. Aaron? Morgan? Somebody?
I'll share. I think one thing, it's not necessarily about sharing our story personally in one specific instance, but trying to remind myself of two things. First, that it's not necessarily my story to tell, it's my son's story. And so really trying to keep it in a light, especially now in the digital age where we're creating a digital record for our kids. And so trying to really be mindful of dignity and those kind of things. I try really hard not to ever try to elicit sympathy, which is difficult because sometimes we do feel like we're walking alone and it can be difficult. We started sharing our story because honestly, I imagine that there's probably many partners that are in the same relationship. My husband and I were in a different place in our son's journey. My husband wanted to put him in a bubble and protect him, and if he had a seizure, we would leave the area that he was at. And when my son got to the point where he was starting to realize that something had happened, so he was somewhere really fun, and then he woke up and he was home, and he didn't understand why. And so for me, that became important because instead of being able to put him in a bubble, I wanted to create this bubble around him of safety. And so we started sharing our story publicly. We live on an island in Southeast Alaska, so it's really easy for everybody to get to know you. People will see my son and they know him by face. We started sharing in a positive way. This is what it looks like. This is what a seizure looks like. It may happen. It has happened in probably every location in our town. But now we don't get those sympathetic looks as much as a, hey, what can I do for you? Can I bring your grocery cart out for you? Can I help you? And so we tried really hard to share the story for that reason, because I didn't want him to grow up feeling isolated, and that was important to us.
Thank you for that. Do you guys have anything else to add?
One thing. Oh, that was really loud. So one way, Melissa just made me think of one way that we've shared with our neighbors is we do like a trunk or treat every year in our neighborhood for Halloween. We sit out on the driveway with a trunk and we interact with people as they come by. And so we've participated in Paint Your Pumpkin Purple, the Purple Pumpkin Project. And we have a little sign that says, ask me why my pumpkin is purple. And I usually have tons of epilepsy and Dravet swag that I just have at home, collect from conferences. And so if someone asks, it gives a chance to explain, because Epilepsy Awareness Day month starts on November 1st, right after Halloween. I give them a little swag item, and that's opened up conversations with our neighbors who have said, oh my gosh, like I had no idea you guys were going through this. Is there any way I can help? Most of the time, there's not a lot, but one of the things I told some of the neighbors on our cul-de-sac is, if you ever see Shane walking around by himself, that is never a situation that we would have consented to. So if you ever see him walking around the neighborhood and he's unaccompanied, please bring him back to our house. Let somebody know. He does have autism, he does elope. So just, having extra eyes out. I've also told people, we do have first responders come to our house. So if you see an ambulance and a fire truck, 99% chance that it's probably for Shane, and we've got it handled, but it does kind of freak people out when they see that at first, especially when it's something happening all the time. They tend to ask, oh my gosh, what's going on? And so just for them to have the context that that's the nature of the syndrome. So something as small as, a purple pumpkin allowed us to we don't give our entire life story, but it allowed us to just give a little, however much we feel like sharing with the people that live in our neighborhood.
As I was sitting here trying to think of an example of how I, would share with strangers Mia's story. Honestly, early on, we had moved from the Philadelphia area when she was just turned 1. We were in a new state, didn't know anyone, and I was staying at home. I was pregnant with Hannah, and I had Mia, who we didn't know she had Dravet, and I didn't really share anything with anybody. I wasn't on social media. I didn't know anybody that had a child with seizures for quite a while. So I was pretty isolated and getting very depressed, and it was a really dark time for me. So it took until she was a couple years old to even open up to a neighbor. And I saw her in the grocery store, and Mia was having a bunch of myoclonics, and I'm in a panic, just trying to figure out, how am I gonna get the heck out of here? And this neighbor's here, and I'm like, oh, what do I say? And she wasn't even looking at Mia. So I just said, she has seizures, real quietly, and she just kind of looked at me and didn't talk to me after that. And she wasn't a next door neighbor. She was somebody that I, would see when we were, I'd walk Mia in her stroller. But yeah, so the earlier years for me, when it came to sharing, was very hard for me. So, as time moved on and there's social media and joining, epilepsy support groups later was huge for me. So I'm very thankful that we all have this together, especially if you're new to the diagnosis. So.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that's one thing that can happen is, sometimes people don't know how to respond. And that takes an incredible amount of bravery to say, well, okay, so this person didn't get it, but the next person will. And so, yeah, absolutely. So when you guys, so I kind of want to dovetail into what you were talking about, Erin, when you're saying that, maybe your story isn't something that you want to tell face to face. So what are things that you might do kind of on the DL, on the down low, to sort of spread awareness for Dravet and continue that aspect of adding hope to your own packs? Do you wear bracelets? Do you wear social media posts? How do you share not verbally about Dravet? Tattoos?
99% of the time, I feel like a walking billboard for DSF. I wear T-shirts. I have Somewhere in here. Well, I can't. Anyways, I'll show it later. I have the logo tattooed on my arm. My husband has it as well. I have 3 different. I have a purple ribbon on my middle finger as well. It comes in handy sometimes on those tough days. Yeah, I feel like for me, it's pretty obvious. I put stickers on my water bottle. I've any type of like swag. I carry bags. We are just eluding DSF, butterfly, purple, ribbon energy 24/7.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much the same. Mia's always wearing purple. I wear black, like different shades of black, but I'm trying to branch out. I do wear purple too sometimes. But yeah, we're all about our purple. And Mia at this point, she's kind of her own, she's a light. And I feel like she's helped me to become brave. Just, not all of us, our kids inspire us, but she's almost 17. She reminds me daily. I'm like, all right, slow down. But all that they go through, and she just has inspired me over the years to be brave and, and just have a thicker skin, but also, be compassionate towards others. And that everybody's going through a lot of different things. And we have Team Mia shirts that we sell every couple years, and yeah, that's kind of what we do.
I kind of feel like so we used to also do a walk for our family, and I kind of feel like you've made it when you found your event t-shirt in the Goodwill. So I just kind of was like, oh, we've made it.
I'll piggyback on that. So when we were fundraising for our son's service dog, we wanted something that people could wear kind of year round. And so we had a company design a logo, and we didn't want it to be specific to anything, but we live in Alaska, so it's beautiful. So we had them design a mountain scene with a dog and a person, and then it says Warrior Owen. And I have been out and seen people I didn't even know wearing that shirt, and it is so cool to see, because it's something that people can just wear, and then we'll have people just randomly tag us in Facebook when they're wearing their shirt or they're using their coffee mug, and that's pretty cool too.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes, I'll add something then too. Obviously we have the swag and all that, but we've always tried to make it that, or I think for a long time we struggled at trying to think that our life with Dravet is just as complicated as anybody else's life, right? If you don't have a rare disease in your life, something that bad that happens to you that day is the worst you've been through maybe your whole life, right? Our level of worst is dire, right? But most people don't have that. So for a long time, we've tried to just be like, oh, we're normal, right? But then every once in a while, somebody reminds you of how intense the things are that you go through life are. And it teaches you to accept, like, yeah, we are dealing with some things quite different, right? So one of the ways that I like to do that, to keep that out there, is, on my Instagram, which is mostly just my friends and all, we will post funny things Vivi did. But it's funny as in like, oh, look, she destroyed the entire house today, right? Or she ripped up $40 that we accidentally left out on the table, or some kind of disaster she created. Number one, because it's funny and it gives us a chance to laugh at it, but it's also that subtle plant of like, yeah, this is like our everyday, right? So appreciate everybody for recognizing that, and but just keeping it out there, because when people do offer to help, one thing in the beginning, I think it only lasted a couple of months, but when people do offer to help, like, we learn quickly to take them up on it, even if it's just like, oh, can we pick you up some groceries at the grocery store? Yes. We just got back from 2 days in the hospital, please, so that just keeps that out there. So that's all.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for that. Yeah, I think it's interesting. You bring up the whole idea of help, and people will ask for help, they will say, how can I help? So when you're doing that, how have you learned as an individual or as a family to allow yourself to be vulnerable enough to say, yes, I need help? What has that been like for you?
So for us, the first real time that we asked for help was when we were fundraising for his service dog. And it was a lot of money that we had to raise, and I was really uncomfortable with it. I did not like the concept of putting ourselves out there, asking people to donate money, even though I knew this was such a positive thing and it was gonna help my son so much. I still just mentally, I really struggled with that concept. And one of my friends kind of offered, hey, let me help run your fundraising page. And I was like, okay, I think I would feel a little better about that. And she was just so reassuring. And she was like, we did like an online page where people could donate to it. And her words of telling me, like, people want to help you. They've been seeing what you've gone through in your story, get a little bit emotional thinking about it. They've watched your struggles over these years, and everyone's been wondering, like, how can we help you? And she's like, this is going to be a very tangible way for people to do that. And we raised the money in like 10 days. It was incredible. We were completely, this was years ago, and it still makes me emotional. We were completely overwhelmed then in a different way, but exactly what she said was right. There was people that were sitting back in our lives that were watching from afar, that were wanting to be able to feel like they were doing something, and they really showed up for us. And I'm so grateful that we went through that process, and that experience like made me feel differently about accepting help. And it can be as big as fundraising tens of thousands of dollars for a service dog, or like he said, it can be, someone picking up a Target order for you or something when you've had a bad day. And just knowing that people in your life, they want to help, and being able to accept that is amazing.
Not sure how to follow that one. We actually went through the same thing with Mia, with her getting her dog, but not to repeat the same thing. So I did think about early days, when after Hannah was born, Mia was like a year and a half. Seizures started to ramp up, and we didn't have anybody in town, and kind of had a babysitter, but kind of not. And my in-laws, I kind of lucked out in that department. They're amazing, and they at the time still lived in Pennsylvania, but always told us, if you ever need anything, like, we mean it, like, just ask. And I just never felt comfortable asking anybody for help. That's just how I was then. I've come a long way since then. But I remember there were times where Mia, we were, off to the hospital again for the second time in a week, and we had nothing, we just couldn't do it with a baby at home. And, I just remember calling my mother-in-law and just crying, and she's like, I'll hop on a plane tonight, I'll be there. And she came and stayed as long as we needed her. She still worked, but thankfully, we were, they were able to do that. My father-in-law every now and then would do the same thing, and that just, that meant everything to us, so.
That's okay. Well, my son, when he fundraised, he just told people that the lemonade was $100 a glass. So we did that fairly quickly, and nobody had the nerve to tell him that they wanted change. So he did really well that day. And I'll be real, that's the hard thing for me. I still can't ask for help. It is very difficult. When I do, it is because I am ready for a breakdown, and it's usually the people that I know I can count on. I have one of my best friends in the world is not comfortable in any way with disabilities, with my son's disability. She will tend to change the subject, but she knows if I reach out that she needs to be there. And so she knows, like, okay, we're going for a walk, and she'll change the subject. That's her comfort level, but that's my way of asking for help. It's like I am at the point of breakdown. I need somebody to step in. So,
I think for us, we have a collection of friends. We don't live near a ton of family, but we are lucky enough to have my mother-in-law super close to us, who is an invaluable. I'm so grateful that I married into such a wonderful family. But I know that not everybody has that. And so we also have a collection of friends that I know are always there, that if I call up Jen and I say, hey, I need dinner tomorrow, can you help? She's like, yeah, what do you want? What are your dietary restrictions again? And then she's there the next day with dinner. And so I'd love to know how you as a family cultivate some of those relationships for your family, and also how do you cultivate relationships for your Dravet child? How do they interact with the community, and how do you work to make sure that they also have the support to know that they are supported? Or does that make sense? How do you cultivate those relationships?
I don't have too much to answer on this one. When we moved, we left our entire support structure behind. So that was really tough. And as most of you know, meeting new people as an adult with kids, it's not very easy because you're not going out in the town, you're not going to wherever. Fortunately, though, my mother-in-law moved out, so that was a big turnaround in fostering that kind of support for us. On the side of Vivi, she's not, even though she's 13, she's not very social with other kids. She's not antisocial by any means. She'll come up to anybody, grab their hand, and give them a hug and come say, sit and play. But then she just does her own thing. So we don't have too much of a child network of friends for her, or we don't have any really. She has that in school, but outside of the home, she's happy to just, when I was reading these, I was cracking up because I'm like, did you get these from my head? Staying home or like playing in the backyard, playing with mulch, all these things. She'll just go walk around and do things, and she seems perfectly happy. So we're not there yet. I'm hoping that at some point she'll break through that barrier and want to actually engage. Like I see Mia engaging with people, and I'm like, oh, she's actually interacting with people on a much deeper level. So we're hoping to get there, but we're not anywhere near there yet.
One of the things that we've done as far as like community involvement, and I fully realize this is not always possible, it hasn't been possible for us at many points along the path, is our community has it's actually the girls softball division, but they do a spirit league for children with disabilities, and we did it a couple years pre-COVID, and then they brought it back, thankfully, after like several years of a hiatus. So we put my son in that. It doesn't always go well. It's really challenging sometimes. Sometimes we show up and push him in his conveyed, and he only lasts 10 minutes, and that's about all we can do. But just to have something like that, it's also important for us because we're around other parents, and these are parents that are not just, part of the Dravet community. These aren't Dravet parents, but they're part of the disability community, so we run into each other at school functions, and some of the kids are in the same class. My daughter realized one of the siblings of one of the kids on Shane's baseball team is in her choir, and so they had a connection, and they would go off and play while he was in the game. So I think that's been outside of epilepsy and Dravet, that's been a nice community, bonding experience for us.
I would say for us over the years, school, of course, was kind of our go-to when she was really young, and it was hard to even just get outside for half an hour without seizures going wild. So, and as she's gotten older, in our area, we have a lot of special needs resources over the years. They've added more, and hopefully in other areas you do too. But she loves Miracle League Baseball, and she started that probably at, 7 or 8. And they have 2 seasons every year, so she's all about being on the Reds and getting to her game. It's an hour a week, and it's amazing. So she does that, and what was the other thing? She's always telling me, and I forget.
That's okay.
She loves her baseball team, and also we go to church, and the church we go to now has an amazing special needs classroom, which for the first time, she can just go into that room, she signs herself in, and they have people there that know what to do, and she doesn't need a buddy, she just goes. And the independence that she has doing that every Sunday it's incredible. And just one last thing. So during the service, the their class comes to the sanctuary and they sit in the back and they get to sing with everybody. And then the pastor will pray and then everyone says, and then you hear Mia, amen. So, and then we're like, yep, there's our Mia. So that's how she likes to.
That's a great way to, I think one of the magic things about so many of our children is that even if they are kind of in their own little realm, they still are this beacon for the people around them, and they just encourage smiles from others. At least that's been my experience. And so just literally being in the community has been a way that we have built that community. I don't know if it's been the same for you guys, just taking those little trips or going even to the dentist or the doctor's office and how that community responds. Have you guys experienced anything like that, or is that?
We have. So our son is on as far as his social skills, he doesn't have a friend group necessarily that he plays with at home, and so his social life is dependent on how social I feel, I guess, because I still have to be there for everything.
Right.
But what we do as a family a lot is camp, and so we go camping, and we've kind of created this realm where our campsite is the fun campsite that kids want to be at. So we're the one that has the Nerf guns at the end, and we have the bikes crashed out, and we make sure we have the cool s'mores fixings, and so we've made kind of friends that way. So when there's only like 2 areas that we can camp in our town, and so when we go out, they're like, oh, they're the ones that have the Nerf guns, and so we've kind of created this little community of coolness for our son if we're feeling social. So
Yeah, thanks for sharing that.
I was going to add to that with, like, school is Vivi's social circle, right? And because she's so friendly and says hi to everyone, there's been times I had to drop her off at school and walk her to her class, and you have teachers and some kids popping out of the classroom to say hi to her as she's walking around like the ambassador of the school saying hi to everybody, right? It's her time to shine. But I also wanted to tie back in something you said before about, like, that whole Spirit Week thing. And this ties back to the community and also with getting out and trying things, right? A lot of times you're going to go to one of those events and it's going to be a disaster, right? 10 minutes you're going to want to leave. Guess what? You can leave and you should leave if it's a disaster. But if you've educated people around you who are at these things about the situation, they're not going to look a second time. They're going to be like, oh, must be a bad day, right? So you're not going to feel awkward leaving. But the next time you go, it might be the most fantastic experience for your child, right? It's not going to be great every time. It's going to be hard sometimes.
Yeah.
But you don't have to stay. Just like, what's our backup plan? Even when we take our little, like, few-hour trips, we went down to, about a 2-hour drive for an overnight stay somewhere in Colorado. And it was like, well, if it gets really bad, it's 2 hours away. We'll just come home. No big deal. We tried. So prepare for that failure, but hope for the best, but get out,
Well, that is actually an excellent segue, Brian, into our next session. No, don't be sorry at all. Before we do go into the second session, which Brian has so effortlessly led us to, I would like to open up the floor to anyone who has any questions or comments. What makes you feel brave? Where do you fall if you're willing to share? Yes. Back in the back. We've got a microphone. Gloria's got a microphone for us.
Hello. Is it on?
Yes.
Okay. So I have a general question for everyone. So how do you guys handle when you have the family that you expect to be there for you, but they're MIA? And go.
I think you can probably hear my husband going, in the back.
I'll take that one. I mentioned, and I feel bad now that I threw my best friend under the bus, but I think we have to respect other people's boundaries and what their comfort level is. Our oldest son is 22, and he is not comfortable seeing his brother have a seizure, and not because it makes him upset. It breaks his heart. So he, as our son grew up, he was the one that directed the medics. He's the one that will always stand on the porch and make sure the ambulance knows where to go. It took me a good year of hurt feelings before I realized that my dad would leave family dinners when my son had a seizure, not because it bothered him, but because he was crying. It was heartbreaking for him because he couldn't fix what was going on with me. And so just knowing and respecting other people's boundaries and knowing that it's not about me, it might be about them, has gotten me to a place where I can just appreciate what they might be able to bring to it. So maybe my dad will show up at every single walk and he'll wear whatever shirt I give him, and that's his comfort level. And so just kind of trying to not let it make you bitter, and just trying to understand that they might have a different space of awareness for them, and giving them that grace, and maybe seeing if there's a job for them that does make them comfortable, because everybody wants to support you, that just might not be the way that they can.
Yeah.
I'll add to that real quick. I think it's even harder, I don't know in your situation, but for me, when it's family, especially immediate, and I know we had moved away, so they weren't too happy. Anyway, so we moved away pretty far, so they weren't in our day-to-day, but they knew that we were going through a lot, and I think it was a good 4 to 5 years of denial from my parents, and it took me a while to work through that emotionally and a lot of therapy, and I also know that your village doesn't have to be mom and dad. My in-laws treat me like a daughter. Not that I love my parents, but for them, that's just something that's it's too much. It was just too much, and now we're much further along in our relationship with it. Me at 16, but the first years are really hard with that, and for me emotionally as a mom, and so just as encouragement that you can build a village with friends, and your extended family, or just there's other people that are family as well. So
I just wanted to add one thing there too, just to get because your two answers are very kind. I'm modifying an old saying: you could pick your nose, you could pick your friends, but you can't pick your family. One thing that Dravet has taught me is to cut out people who just don't fit into my life. My sister's one of them, right? And I don't think it was because of anything particular. She does a lot of fundraising for her mother-in-law, had the cancer thing, so her and her kids do fundraising for that. Never really supported. I remember one time years ago, she was looking into doing fundraising for DSF, and she was like, "Oh, that whole thing is a joke." They didn't even because it was way a long time ago. It was maybe 3 years in where there wasn't too much going on. I'm like, well, you do a lot of fundraising. How about you offer to do something with it, right? Like maybe if you know so much, maybe you can help them out, right? And it just became like she never really paid much attention. So, at this point in my life, she's cut out, and I'm fine with that, right? We've never been that close kind of family anyway. Obviously, a lot of people have close family ties, but just remember, you don't have to be friends with your family if you don't like them. Hopefully it's not the case, but when that is the case, I got some good claps on that.
Thanks for that. Yes.
This is not a question. It's more of, I'm hoping, a lighthearted, funny. Brian, you shared about sharing the picture of your daughter destroying the house. And this is something, I have 2 older kids, and we always discourage them with the throwing or doing the things. But let me tell you, Joanna can throw whatever the hell she wants, and she can do whatever crazy stuff she wants because it means she's here. Yeah. And it makes us appreciate the times, that we never thought she would be here or be able to throw something. So that just made me completely laugh inside and just warmed my heart, because at least it means that they're here and they're with us, because the alternative is horrible. So I just wanted to share that. That really spoke to me.
Yeah, thank you for that. There's one in the back, Gloria, too. I don't know. You pick. Proximity.
Hey, I'm Adam Capps. I just had a comment on what you said. So mine and Casey's family dynamics, completely different. So she's an only child, I'm one of 4. And for me, her family, super involved. In my opinion, sometimes almost annoying. But I love them. I wouldn't trade them for the world. They're fantastic. Yeah. But for me, I never had that expectation of including very many people. I'm the middle child. If you're here, you're here. If you're not, oh well, I'll figure it out. So that also kind of put a strain on me and her, because I don't have those expectations, she does. So I don't know if you're here with your spouse or who you're here with, but you know, figuring that dynamic out between you two and setting those expectations where you're both comfortable. So hope that helps. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for that so much. It's when you have so I've been really practicing for one of my own personal areas of growth is that when you have expectations, it then opens up the opportunity to lead to resentment. And when those expectations aren't met, then you have and carry this resentment. So for my family, bless their little hearts, they're not able to be involved in a way that I would like them to be. And so I've had to adjust my expectations because carrying resentment is way too heavy, and I do not have room in my pack. I don't have room in my pack to carry that resentment. So something that I am personally working on is tempering my expectations to where I can meet someone where they are at and understand that whatever it is that they are or are not doing is where they are, and that is at the capacity with which they can be and do. It's not easy work, but yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, now I have lots of things, but some of the earlier comments kind of got me thinking about, you know, this strain this puts on with that marital relationship or co-parenting or whatever your situation is, and the comment made earlier about being in a different place with the other parent of your child in terms of both willingness to ask for help. I wish my husband were at this one instead of me, actually, but also just that hope versus reality. And right. When one parent is like, he's gonna get better, and the other one's like, well, I hope so, but here's where we are and here's what we need to prepare for. Do you guys have any advice on how to kind of manage, because it creates a lot of tension in a very important relationship in raising that child? So any advice?
Yeah, that strikes me a lot. I think what a lot of the I hope it's going to get better is rooted in is I hope I'm going to get back to the life I was expecting to have, not the one that I have now. And that to me is a poison. That's a poison that takes quite a while to get over, right? When you have something terrible, you know, some tragic situation in anybody's life, and it takes a long time to let go of the life you had planned, the life you had envisioned. And it's not so much a case, though, of, oh, let's face the reality of the dire situation. I think it's a lot more of a mind shift to say, this isn't like it's a terrible situation. I mean, yes, there's a lot of trauma in what you're in, but let me focus instead on what the situation that I'm in is, and find a way to continue enjoying a life in this new situation. Right, because a lot of times hoping, and in reality, you know, the trend with Dravet is that it does get better, right? The trend is the first bunch of years is a lot of seizures, a lot of a lot of problems, and then things start to settle. Not 100% for everybody, but there's a lot of, you know, seizures reduced, and as you might have heard some of us talking about behaviors at certain points, right? You're dealing with behaviors instead, but there's a new kind of a way to live with that. So the quicker you just accept that it's a different life than I was expecting, and let me find the ways to enjoy this life and get the most out of it that I can, the less of an issue that all becomes.
I just wanted to add to that as well, as far as relationships and dealing with this as parents or co-parents or whatever you're in. I think in general, marriage can be hard, and then you add Dravet, woo, takes you on a ride, right? And for us, early years were rough. On our marriage, and Justin would, you know, he'd be fine with me saying this, he's here with Mia, but you know, we weren't on the same page emotionally or mentally for quite a while, and I was resentful and I was angry a lot and holding it in. We were on our own little islands dealing with it, the way we each just coped. And it wasn't a healthy way of coping, but we were different and didn't know how to connect and be a team. So it took a couple years, but I highly recommend, counseling is not a bad thing, and it really saved us. We're not, we are so much stronger, and we are completely opposite people. We're nothing alike, and we've learned how to, okay, that's how you, communicate. You're not, trying to diss me or whatever, but yeah, so I know it's hard to do that when things are crazy and you're dealing with daily seizures and mayhem, but yeah, I just wanted to add that because, relationships aren't perfect, and then when you add something like this, it just throws a huge wrench, and our relationships are so important and more saving. So.
Oh, sorry.
Are you sure? Okay. I was just going to add, I completely agree with everything you said. I know, maybe this is unique to us, I don't know, but we struggled with, my husband was in a very different place, and it took a lot of, back and forth and being on islands to finally understand part of where he was coming from is I was very connected to the community. I was in the social media groups, seeing all the posts. I was messaging with moms every day. I had much more connection to the validation of other people living this life, and he didn't have that at all. And so it was hard for him. He felt like he'd had no outlets besides me. He felt like he was disconnected from the community. So, he's very shy, love him, but he's an introvert for sure. And so we made it a point to try to go to some of the smaller Dravet conferences to bring our family, to have him go. And I remember there was one in LA several years back where he got off talking to another dad, like one-on-one, which is kind of more his style. And my husband had recently become the caregiver, and that dad also was in that position, and they talked for like 3 hours, just like back and forth. And I was like, I don't know if I've ever seen him talk this much in 15 years that I've known him. So that made me so happy, and I was like, okay, this completely confirms that he needed that outlet too, and he probably wasn't going to go do it himself because that wasn't his personality. So like creating opportunities, he's now joined all the groups, and he sees all the posts, and he's like, hey, did you see so-and-so posted about he comes to me now and tells me, which I think is wonderful, and I think it's been really helpful for him to validate what he is going through and what we're going through. And his perspective as a dad is different than mine. And so to connect with other dads has been huge too, to see, to be able to relate to that side of things. So anyways, that helped us.
You good, Brian? Yeah. Okay. So thank you so much for that incredibly insightful and wonderful conversation. So I am now going to pass the baton over to Erin Riollo, who's going to continue us onto section 2. And just as a reminder, after section 2, we will be having a snack break. So that is coming. Click. Next. It's not switching, friends. Aha, thank you. There you go, babe. Thank you.
So now we have that all solved. We're all courageous. We're all brave. We're all filled with hope. So now that we've filled you with some inspiration, it's time for the preparation. It's time to say, as we say in our community, not today, Dravet. Some of us even added a not today in an interesting place for our tattoo. We're going to add a little bit more to those hope-filled backpacks. We'll spend this next session exploring necessities as well as give ideas on where to go. But first, before we continue packing, we must confront the reality of Dravet joining on those adventures. Time and time again, I see posts in our support group from caregivers asking for tips on avoiding seizure triggers on their outings and adventures. Excuse me. Please remember, Dravet will Dravet. That just means that it may be more helpful for you to prepare on how to respond when Dravet rudely invites itself along. We all know that Dravet is more than just seizures, so I'm not only referring to seizure response, but also to behaviors, low stamina, elopement, and the like. When we ask you to prepare for the inevitability of Dravet, we don't say that to scare you. We say that to empower you. Don't let Dravet win and keep you from choosing joy. In my family, we try to always have an escape plan, so much like Brian had mentioned. What this means is that we make sure we always know our way out of our outing or an adventure, whether it's time to head home or sadly to the hospital. Once we accepted that Dravet doesn't care if it's invited or not and we better prepared ourselves, we finally felt more freedom to explore beyond our own backyard. Things that we never leave home without are rescue medicines, VNS magnets, and even a 911 script that can help us or someone else communicate our needs to dispatch. When our son was frequently having daytime seizures, we also included a blanket or mat for him to lay on during seizures and at minimum a cloth to lay under his head. There were days that we traveled with a hospital go bag just in case we had to transport and be admitted to the hospital. While it really depends on where your outing is going to take you, with the summer season in full effect, we always make sure to bring along cooling vests, cooling towels, spray bottles, small handheld fans, sun hats, and sunglasses. Your packing lists are really dependent on your warrior's needs and where you're exploring, and I know that our panelists will have even more to share. So now that we've started your packing list, where are you going to go? At the beginning of today's session, we asked you to reflect on where your comfort lies for exploring and getting out of the house. And if your current comfort zone lays kind of to the left of that scale, we're hopeful that we can move the needle a bit. For me personally, my scale didn't change until I really got connected into my local disability parenting groups. While they're not particularly well-versed in Dravet, they were other parents who definitely understood my feelings and needs to not be so isolated. They helped me to see the many opportunities, both big and small, that were right at our fingertips. Through local support, I learned about the best local and fenced parks. I learned about sensory events at different public venues. I learned about different adaptive classes and sports teams, as well as Special Olympics. I learned about regional events like CAST for Kids and Courageous Kids Climbing. I learned about day camps and overnight camps sponsored by local children's hospitals. And because of that, I'm so grateful for the numerous resources and opportunities our family has benefited from just by simply being a part of our local disability parenting community. They too share the desire to be brave and choose joy. So let's get back to our panelists, hear how they handle Dravet as an uninvited guest, what they consider to be their packed essentials, and how they connect with their community.
Okay, so we carry a lot of things with us. My son is very uncontrolled with his seizures. We carry oxygen, we carry lots of rescue medication. He eats via G-tube, about 75% of his diet, so we have a emergency G-tube kit. He is incontinent, so we also have incontinence supplies and extra clothes. We always bring his Convade. He has a service dog. When we go to Target, it feels like we're moving in. That's the joke. And, you know, it's a lot. It's a lot to remember. And I think the two most important things I want to hit home is, number one, he's not controlled. We used to live in a place where we waited for this inevitable time where he was going to have better control. He was going to be more stable. Behaviors were going to be better. He also has autism. If we kept waiting for that, we would still be at home. That didn't happen, unfortunately, for our situation. But we decided, just like she said, okay, well, we can't wait for everything to just be fine. We're just going to have to learn how to prepare for what's going to happen when we go out. We've experienced many, many, many times of things going wrong, and we started something that we called lessons learned, where we debrief with each other. Okay, that was a hot mess. Now what can we learn from that for next time to be a little bit more prepared? One set of backup clothes wasn't enough. Thankfully, we were out somewhere that had a gift shop because we had to go buy him swim trunks and a shirt. because we actually needed to have 2 sets of backup clothes. You know, you eventually laugh about some of the things that happen, and you realize, okay, well, we made it through that. This extends to traveling too. We always bring our Sammy. We bring our Sammy router with us. That's been huge because he has most of his seizures when he's asleep, and I rely on the recordings for like data collection, so to keep track of his seizure numbers. Or we've also stayed in Airbnbs with family. We do like a big family thing where we stay together and we bring our Sammy so that, you know, he's still monitored, and it allows us to go into the living room and be able to hang out with other people while he's asleep. I'm sure I'm missing things, but yeah, it's a lot of stuff, and I think that was like kind of the most daunting thing in the beginning, and honestly, we've added to the amount of things that we bring, but that feeling of like security and just trying to be as prepared as possible for anything that can happen. We don't just bring like as many doses of medication as, you know, however long we're going to be gone. We bring the whole entire bottle because he's on a couple specialty medications that you can't just run down to Walgreens and pick up. And we've, you know, learned that the hard way as well. Sometimes things get spilled. But yeah, I think that's all I have for now.
To add to that, I mean, ditto to a lot of those things. Over the years, it kind of ebbed and flowed with how much we would need to take with us, depending on how our seizures were and how frequently. I can say that we're more the organized chaos family. Dravet has not gotten me to be a more organized person, so at least at home. So I'm the mom that has, the random bag that I'm like, oh crap, I forgot, and I just throw the change of clothes and hope for the best. And over the years, I've gotten a little better at that. But we always make sure we have, her rescue meds and magnet always. And we're very vigilant. We try to be vigilant about, where we're going, like how's it going to be temperature-wise, things like that. But yeah, that's kind of where we are with that.
We're on the different end of the spectrum. Our son actually is fairly well controlled, and so we've gone to a place where we don't have to carry quite as much with us. But what has never gone away is just that escape route, always knowing how long it will take for medics to get to you. If we want to go for a hike, how long will it take us to hike out if something happens and we might be close to cell range. Where in the store we can sit and recover safely when he does have a seizure, if he does, because the reality of Dravet is that it's going to happen again. We just don't know when. So that is always something I have in my pack. Our pack has lessened quite a bit. We just, that's something that's we're always prepared for, is where's that exit plan?
Yeah, we're in a similar boat. It does ebb and flow over time. So some of the essentials too are like cheese, her iPad, whatever stuffed animal she wants to bring that day. But the other thing I'd recommend is always having separate the most critical items into a separate pouch, like the rescue meds, extra doses of medicine, and everything else can go somewhere else, because you always want to have those critical components handy, always, right? You don't want to be digging through a bag with them. And, if you do travel by plane, all of your meds, liquid or not, can come into the cabin with you. You don't want to check them, because if your flight's delayed, you don't have access to them. I was just on a flight with somebody recently. Their child had some other ailment, and they only had the dose they needed with them. The rest was on their check bags, and the flight got canceled, and they were freaking about getting their check bags, or if they were going to move, right? So have that stuff with you. Even if you're on the keto diet and you have all these weird foods, like we used to do that, you can get a note. This is a medical diet. You can bring it on the plane with you. It doesn't have to get checked. So make sure you're getting those essentials, and research or ask other people about where you can have them. And it does change over time. We definitely, it used to be, we'd each have like an overnight bag, and we'd have a full suitcase for Vivian, including diapers and everything, right? But as things change, they change. And also, I would just say too, if you are going to go somewhere, day trip, overnight trip, or a flight, make note of what you can get at your location, right? Because if you know it's something easily available and you're pressed for space, bring what you need for the journey, and then you could pick it up locally if you need to. Obviously, that's not going to be everything, but some things you can do that with.
How do you handle and manage Dravet in public? So we're talking not just the seizures, but behaviors, the elopement. How do you handle that when it certainly wasn't invited to come along?
For us, our son's biggest thing is still his behaviors, and our pediatrician once told us when we get the looks to tell people that how did he say it? He's young for his height. That's how he said it. And he said it will make people think before they're judging. And so that's something that we get a lot of. My son is almost as tall as me, and he has some behaviors. And you can't tell a lot of times by looking at somebody what their disability is. So you do get those judgments and those things. And so that, for us, has been the biggest piece, is just how people respond to behavior. He eloped. He hasn't eloped, oh gosh, I need wood to knock on, in a really long time. But for a long time, that was the biggest thing. And so I'd be the one in the panic, like looking for him, like how did he, it was like 2 seconds, you know. So for us, it's the behavior that we more struggle with and just kind of how we react to that. And honestly, it depends on my mood. Sometimes it's a look, and I can give somebody, and they know that's probably all they're gonna need to see for that day. So, but sometimes it's just asking for help, you know, like, hey, we're having a moment, do you think you can, or pointing something else out, like, hey, buddy, do you see what's going on over there? You know, trying to kind of break the pattern with them. But just, again, knowing my ex, it has been a big help.
I would just add, from the behavior side of things, I had to really work on myself to let go of expectations. That was something that was really hard for me, is like, we're gonna go to this museum or whatever, you know, children's museum, and my kids are gonna have so much fun, and we're spending all this money, it's gonna be great. And then we would get there, and my son would be so overstimulated and hitting us, and people are looking because it's loud, he slaps us, and, you know, he's just freaking out. And we always have the iPad, and honestly, we usually have a backup one as well, just in case, because can't live without that. And, you know, my husband and I just got to a place where we're like, who cares if we're out on this vacation at this thing that we paid all this money that's supposed to be for the kids, and he's sitting in his Convates staring at his iPad. If he's less overstimulated, and if that's what he needs, or if one of us breaks off and takes him to a quieter place while the other person stays with my daughter, like, just letting go of those expectations and knowing that we just have to adjust to every situation. We have to meet him where he's at. There's a lot of times where we have to power through. He's had a really bad night. Sometimes it's a tough call. Are we still gonna do this thing? They talked about perseverating. He perseverates constantly. And so if he knows we're doing something, it doesn't matter how many rescue meds he had and seizures and how out of it he is. If he knows that that's what we're doing today, he won't let it go. So we call it Weekend at Bernie's. We prop him up, put some sunglasses on him, and we just do what we can do. And you know, all that matters is that in his mind, we did the thing that we said we were gonna do, so he can cross it off and stop perseverating over it. So I think just, you know, changing your own expectations of how things are gonna go. I agree 100% with always having a backup plan. He was supposed to be with us on this trip. My husband was also supposed to be with us, and we decided 2 days before we flew out that he was not in a good place, and we had to come up with an exit strategy. It was either all of us come, none of us come, or some combination of us come. So we went with option C, some combination of us, and it's still 12 years into it. I still struggled, like I didn't sleep all night because I was like, but he's gonna miss out on the conference, and you know, am I making the right decision? What if he's fine when he's at home? And I got here, he wasn't doing great, so it was the right decision. So, you know, just always having those exit plans and just going with your gut and sticking to a decision. Only other thing, sorry, I'm rambling here, that I would add is we also started like kind of doing like benchmarks, I call it, where we use that for this exercise for this trip, which is where, okay, if this happens, like when you're kind of taking it day by day, if this particular thing happens, we're out, we're pulling out, or, you know, and that kind of helps us like guide. Like I like to just lay down like a sort of rule and say, okay, like if this happens, then we know this is the decision that we're gonna make. And it just makes me feel a little bit better because Dravet is nothing but unknowns, and it changes every 5 minutes, and it keeps you on your toes. And so at least if I have some like guideline that I can tell myself, it helps.
I'll just add real quick to that. Over the years, it's changed, but I think for Mia, the fatigue factor was huge, like most of her life. She's gotten a lot better that way, but still, we have to watch for that. And, you know, it was just a lot of divide and conquering over the years with having 2 kids. And, you know, we could just look at each other, like give the eye, like plan B, you know, kind of, yep, all right, you want to go that way? I'll take her this, you know, take her to the shade and give her some water. And so, yeah, so for us, it's a lot of that divide and conquer, just like you said, like just things are going to change on a dime, and we both know that, and we're just kind of, you know, all right, what are we going to do instead? Or we've gone to a restaurant once when she was really young, and I think it was for my birthday, and she started going into a cluster. We were getting seated, and we're like, we got to go. And then we just walked out, went home, and had cake at home, and it was fine. But we both just knew, we'll try it. If it doesn't happen, we'll have fun at home, and it'll be okay, but we'll try it, so.
And I would just say with all the neuro out, you know, with all the behaviors and stuff out in public, with all the neuroatypical people in public these days, it's not on you to feel comfortable. It's on everybody else to feel comfortable, because most people have been exposed to it already. And I definitely suggest getting used. I'm not going to say the words of the acronym, but I definitely suggest getting used to IDGAF when you're in public. Obviously, you have an indoor and outdoor voice, right? And you're going to have certain behaviors you can't allow in public. Like if Vivi was going to go rip off clothes at the Macy's and just throw them on the floor, we can't do that. But she's going to be her. It's other people's problems to deal with it. And even if it's a seizure, you know what you're doing. Handle. If people offer you help and you want help, take it. If they offer help and you don't need it, you can nicely explain. But if people are looking at you like, what's wrong with your kid? I mean, we've had that happen. It's like, come on, person, but whatever. Just, you know, it's not on you to make other people comfortable. And I'm not saying be a jerk, right? But like, this is your normal. Just treat it as your normal. Pretend you're at home, right? And feel the same way as if you were in public as in private.
I mentioned some of the resources that we benefit from in our family. I'll just mention those again in case they have them in your area. One is called CAST for Kids, C-A-S-T, and it's a one-day fishing excursion for children with disabilities. And one person takes them and a parent and caregiver out in a boat, and they get to experience the joy of fishing. And this is for children of all abilities. So they ask if you need a power chair on the boat, and I don't know how they do it, but they manage it. So that's one thing I wanted to mention that is a national organization. This one I don't think is so much national, but it's kind of mountainy and West Coast region. It's called Courageous Kids Climbing, and it's a climbing event. And the one by us, they hosted at the YMCA on a climbing wall. And I have seen, these large teenage children. They're still our children, right? In big power wheelchairs or strollers get hoisted all the way up on a platform by these firefighters and other volunteers, and they're just pulling them so that they get the joy of climbing also. We mentioned baseball. My son participates in a Challenger League, Little League, that you'll find that league. I know it was called some other names here. He plays adaptive football. That started just in the community. It's not necessarily, you might find it at your own, in your own area, but it just took a bunch of parents saying, hey, we want to offer this kinds of activities for our disability, our kids with disabilities. I'm wondering what resources you have in your area and what you've participated in, whether it's at a local level or a national level.
Our town and the towns around us, and yours might too, and you may not know it because I didn't know for a little while. It's listed as specialized recreation, and they add classes like all the time, and like fun events for all different age groups with special needs. For the teens, they'll have bingo nights and movie night and everything in between, and that was pretty cool. And usually it's free, which is great. So I just recommend if you look that up under, in your area, you might find things you didn't know were there. So that's, yeah. And Miracle League Baseball, if you have that, highly recommend.
I just want to second what Erin was saying before about local groups, right? Other special needs groups. There are usually local or statewide autism groups, right? A lot of our kids, a lot of people might debate whether or not it's truly autism or not, but it expresses as autism, right? They've got tons of learning and experience, and I was like, one day, why am I not tapping into this? These parents have been part of this forever. There's tons of resources they know about. It's not exactly the same as Dravet, no, but we can learn from them. Even regular epilepsy groups, right? Finding out what people who don't have all the neurological impairment go through when they have seizures, people who can communicate it back to you and some things. So there's so much to learn from the local groups and all the sensory events. Just start looking out around for all that stuff because there's a ton that you can get from. Dravet Syndrome Foundation is fantastic, but it's not the only resource, right? This is great for Dravet specific, but there's so many things that our kids branch into and people who've been through it all that can give you additional ideas and thoughts.
You mentioned sensory experiences. So check into if you have theater groups, different venues like museums and zoos and aquariums. They will always, not always, they will usually have special sensory nights, and it's they'll do different lighting. Even showed up on my Facebook the other day. Regal Cinemas, it was today doing a sensory screening of Inside Out 2. And so they just, if you tap into those different organizations, different public venues, we bought tickets to Wicked in Seattle because it's a sensory showing, and I am just thrilled about it because it's going to give our son a chance to, if he needs to get up and walk around, he can do that without disturbing other theater patrons. But, take a look into that, looking at different sensory events in your area.
Has anybody been to a sensory event? Right? It's amazing. When you talked about walking around, every time you bring your kids somewhere, you're always going to be self-conscious. Even though I said that acronym before, you're still going to be self-conscious. You go to a sensory event, and kids are doing what our kids do. They're screaming out, they're walking around, they're just doing everything. And you're like, I could just sit back and relax, and it's just chaos going on, and it's wonderful. It's the best thing in the world.
And all the parents just nod and go, yep, totally get it.
Before we jump into our audience questions, just to make it a little lighthearted and to share that we've all had an experience somewhere, what is the most interesting or oddest place in public that you've had to deal with a seizure?
I have a few, but I'm going to go with, this was new. In January, we decided to go to Universal Studios for my daughter's birthday. In hindsight, like we were talking about, sometimes it's great, sometimes it doesn't work out. It was not the best place for my son for many reasons. Lessons learned. But if anyone's ever been to Universal Studios Hollywood, they have the tram ride, which is 45 minutes long. We took my son in his Convade, and as he does often when we're in a car or a moving vehicle, he fell asleep. And for him, every time he falls asleep, he has a seizure. So he had a really fun tonic-clonic on the ride. It turned into the driver stopping the vehicle. He thought that the seizure was from the motion, but we were like, it's not the motion. He fell asleep. It was a whole thing. So yeah, that was odd, not fun, but we made it through, We know now we got to be careful. We got to keep him awake if he is going to ever do that ride again.
Trying to think of interesting. Ours are kind of, I don't think they're not boring, but a lot of at night or at school or I'm just trying to think of an odd one. I mean, so many times it was me driving the girls and she'd be in the car and it'd be like, oh my God, where am I going to pull over? Where am I going to pull over? You know? And I remember the one time, and every time I go by, it's like, I don't know if you all do that, but you just go by that one spot and you're like, oh, yeah, I remember that, you know? But I remember I was picking her up from school and I had Hannah with me and we were driving, she was seizing like really crazy, and so I pull over, and of course the organized mom I am didn't have a blanket or anything. So I found a patch of grass on the side of the road, and you know, and this guy and his son was with his son, and they pull over and I'm like busy trying to give her Diastat on the side of the road, and he came over with a big blanket and was like, what else can I do for you? And it was just incredible. So yeah, I can't think of anything exciting. I probably will later, but that's my story.
I have a good one. I have a really good one. I really wanted to tell you guys what I have in my pack, but you'd think I was a crazy Alaskan. So one thing I keep in my pack, and this is why, I bet you can guess at the end. So when my son was 2, we went for a hike, and we're going around a corner, and my dog takes off. He's off leash. He's usually really well behaved. He takes off and he starts barking, and he's going up the hillside and he's coming down the hillside, and he's going up the hillside and coming down the hillside. And I'm like, that's not a good sign. And this lady comes trucking it around the corner and says, there's a bear. And right as she comes trucking around the corner to tell me there's a bear, my son starts having a seizure. So here I am with my dog, who's supposed to be protecting us and is protecting us because he's going up and down the hillside to let me know a bear's coming, and I'm not picking up on that. He's barking to keep the bear at bay. I've now got my son, and I'm running to my car as fast as I can to get away from this bear that's coming around the corner. So if you guessed bear spray, you would be, or bear, and a bear whistle. I have both just in case now, and that will never come out of my pack.
Let's go ahead and open it up to questions or comments from you. Go ahead, Gloria.
Yes. I appreciate all the resources. I'm a social worker by trade, and that's, you know, something that helps all families of all kind, and it really makes life livable, whether it's a social one, financial, you know, resources are great. So I appreciate you sharing that because everyone needs to hear these. And 2 that we've recently used it's called, and I believe it's nationwide, Icing Smiles, Inc. Okay, that's what I thought. I saw a local woman who has a son with Dravet. She did it for his birthday. And you join and you give your child's birthday, and they'll make cakes for them for free. And they deliver them. She literally brought it to my house the day of the birthday party. And it was the most lovely thing that I didn't have to think of. They asked me what my theme was, what my flavors were, what the color, everything. And she just brought it, and it was just such, you know, a thoughtful thing. So that's a great resource. It's just something simple. And then another one, and I believe it also is nationwide, but it might have specific areas that they have more of a following, is A Kid Again. I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and they have a chapter there, and we just went to the Pittsburgh Pirates game, and you know, they give us tickets, we get to intermingle with other families, not just Dravet specific, but kids who have life-threatening illnesses. And for Christmas, they brought us to the trolley center, and we got to go on a trolley with Santa and sing, and it's just the most joyful thing to be around people who are like you, who, it's all pretty sensory. Kids have all different abilities, and you just feel free to be yourself and not judged. So those are 2 really good resources that are free.
I'll mention with A Kid Again too, sorry I got a little distracted in case you didn't mention it. They don't just have in-person events, they have at-home packet events that you can do too. So we've benefited from that in Washington, even though we don't live near a place where they do it, mainly on the East Coast, but they sent Lego packs, and then they had a Lego Zoom where you could build all together. So that one is A Kid Again. I'll mention it in a second. Go ahead.
I'm a Dravet grandma and my first conference, but we have an almost 5-year-old grandson with Dravet. And our family is kind of stuck at, we haven't flown with him since his diagnosis. He flew when he was a baby, but we have not been on an airplane with him. His parents have not been on an airplane with him. Was there a threshold for you, or how you got to your comfort level, or something you did, or you tried a short distance? It's going to be so stimulating if he does it. So it's sort of, how do we cross that threshold, worry about rescue medicines, oxygen, whatever tips you could offer?
That's a really good question, and we're so happy that you're here also. The threshold. So my son has had a lot of seizures on an airplane, which used to be one of my worst case scenarios. What would we even do? We actually, the first time we experienced it, we were doing medical travel. We were going from San Diego to New York. So it's a long flight. It's like a 7-hour flight. And he fell asleep and he clustered, and we had to give him rescue medication, and it was very difficult. We brought multiple rounds of rescue medication because I wanted to just be sure that I had lots of stuff with us. As far as oxygen, they have portable oxygen concentrators, which I know some people have had success getting them through insurance. I feel like more recently it's getting a little bit easier. Previously, you kind of had to buy them yourself. There's definitely options. And then as far as comfort with how much do you want to let people know that this is a potential or a possibility when you are getting on an airplane, I think it kind of depends. Some people prefer to be really open about it. Other people are like, I'll get you if I need you. We've definitely had situations where we were seated in the front of the plane and the flight attendants did notice that he was having a seizure, and thankfully, in our experience, they've been wonderful, and they came up and, asked if we needed anything or if there's anything they could do, and we said, nope, we've got it under control, but, we'll find you if we need something. So that's been really helpful. And then the only other lessons learned that we did learn the hard way is one time we sat in the bulkhead because we were traveling with his service dog, and he had a seizure during takeoff. And when you sit in the bulkhead, you have to put all your stuff in the overhead bin. And I did not think of that happening. So our rescue bag was up in the top. But again, in that type of situation, you can let somebody know. But now for all future flights, we always make sure that we have a smaller bag that has his magnet and his rescue meds and stuff. And we just take that out and put it in the seat in front of us. That's what we've done for flying.
Yeah, I would say this similar to number one, being prepared. But I think at least for us, the threshold was knowing that we can control the seizure easy enough. Our daughter used to have status seizures, which always required hospital check-ins. Once we got past those first few years where we knew she had a seizure, we could stop it within 5 to 10 minutes, and then she'd sleep it off. No hospital intervention needed or any extreme emergency. That's when that coincided with around the time when we flew. And the other thing that helps, again, I'm not saying this is for everybody, but my wife had some prescription Ativan, and we each took one for the flight to help keep our nerves calmed. And it just, you have to make sure you anything to take care of yourself, because you have to remain calm in that situation. You are in a little tube, right, with this situation going on. So having whatever you need to be prepared. But again, the threshold was just that, the comfort level that you can handle a seizure and get it under control. And I think a lot of the kids love flying once they get on the plane, right? Because it's like any kid loves flying. It's amazingly fun for them, takeoff and landing especially. So they'll probably enjoy it at a certain point. And also, thank you for being a Dravet grandparent. It's awesome you're here. Thanks.
I would like to really quickly add to your question as well. This is Austin. I'm down here. One of the things that our family does, we fly rather extensively with our son who's 10, and I have a friend who was a former flight attendant, and she said that, one of the things that would be really beneficial for you as you're flying is to talk to your flight attendants And so every time we board a plane, we always board with the disability group. And so I have come up with, I mentioned a script earlier. So one of our scripts is, "Hi, I'd like to let you know that my son has epilepsy, and while we don't anticipate a seizure, it is possible that it will happen. On our persons, we have all of his rescue medication with us, so that if it does happen, we know how to take care of it. There have been occasions where he has required oxygen, so I may reach out to you stating that that's what we need. Do you have any questions?" And that's it. So I do it very succinctly. I do it very openly because they have to go and review their own documents and their own protocols for when seizures happen. And he has had seizures on the plane. And so they have checked on us. We've turned on our car light if we've needed it. And then we've been able to just continue on. All commercial airlines have emergency oxygen on board. So if that is something that you may need, then it is there as an emergency. There are a lot of stipulations when it comes to flying with your own personal oxygen concentrators. Most of the airlines do require that you have at least 1.5 times the duration of battery life for the flight distance. So if your flight is, say, 2 hours long, they would require a minimum of 3.5 hours of battery life for that concentrator. So something to keep in mind with that as well. It is possible to fly with oxygen concentrators. It just takes an extra level of steps. And I know Erin has a lot of success with probably something that she's probably going to bring up with TSA. Yeah, so I'm going to turn it over to Erin.
Yeah, TSA Cares, you might have all heard of it, but it's wonderful. And we learned the hard way that we should have been using that all along. Yeah, you literally just go online to TSA Cares. It asks you what your needs are. For Mia, we found out a couple years ago that, now that they have the new scanner where you put your arms up and have to stand real still, she'll stand there, but she's not still, she's kind of wiggly. And anyway, that turned into, since nobody knew she had a disability, and even if I trying to tell them that, it didn't matter. It was, we're taking her to this room by herself to do a pat down from a female officer. And they weren't going to hear me. And I was like, Mama bear, Alaska bear here, like, no. It was terrible. So ever since we've just gone on there. I think it depends on the airport, but normally the 24 hours before you're going to take off, they'll call you or at least, send you a message. They meet you at the gate before you even go through security. This last time they walked us right to the front. The guy was super sweet with Mia, got her through, even though there's a whole bunch of blips, because she couldn't stand still. But I do highly recommend it. So if you have any, even with the seizures, things like that, you can add all those things, those needs. They can, put you in a wheelchair, they can help you with anything you need. So just remember that in the airports. Also, real quick for the flying, for us, our doctor, when Mia was really bad off, and we, were just taking a flight from Raleigh to Philadelphia, it's like less than an hour, but even still, when travel was a big trigger for her. So our doctor would prescribe, do a bridge with her medication sometimes when we were in just really dire straits. Whatever, clonazepam, and wean her off when we get home, or, so you can also talk to your doctor, and if that's if your child's doing, having a lot of seizures, and that's a big trigger, so.
I just want to jump in real quick, and not to beat the travel horse, but a lot of it is comfortability. But for us, we didn't have the option of not flying. Where we live, we have to fly to Seattle for any of our son's specialty care. And he wasn't always doing well. There were times we tried the ketogenic diet and we had to fly to Seattle every month. And the reality of him having a seizure on the plane was very real. His behaviors were very real. Medication was things that were happening. And so a lot of it was just my fear, too. The chance of him having a seizure on the plane was probably very great. It was going to happen. But aside from that, I had to get past the part where I was scared. And so I would just be really mindful. I know it's difficult to think about where they might be as far as flying, but just knowing that everybody has a different place too, and a lot of it just might be fear. There's so many things with our Dravet kids also, behaviors, eloping. I mean, I think I don't even drink liquid when I travel with my son, honestly. He's 11 and he still will take off out of the bathroom. My husband's like, have you had any water? And I'm like, not in about 12 hours, but I'll be fine, you know? So just the reality of what our children go through aside from just the seizure part of it. And so we just kind of got to the point, we still travel. Every 3 months we go to Seattle, and he has had seizures in the airport, on a plane. We've had bad and good experiences, and so just knowing that they'll get there, I hope they'll get there, but they might not be there yet.
I'll come right to that one. One last thing I'm going to add to that, and I know it's a little bit hard, you're the grandparents, so being able to convey the same message to your family. We were, just before we got our diagnosis or before the seizure started to happen, we were supposed to take our first family trip to Hawaii. So we got the diagnosis, and we're like, what are we supposed to do? Like, can we get on a plane? Are we even allowed to do that? And we had the most amazing neuro at the time, and he said, take the trip. Because you don't know. Damn it. You don't know if you get to take it later. So we didn't go to Hawaii because I wasn't ready to go across the ocean, because it's that whole, you've got 2.5 hours until the midpoint, and a friend of mine is an Alaska Airlines pilot, and he said they just head to whichever land is closest. We weren't ready for Hawaii, but we did go on a vacation, and that was really the thing. We had these visions of traveling with our family, and we couldn't let that get in the way.
Thank you. I'm going to take that advice. Take the trip.
Take the trip.
But can somebody share with me what the logistics would be when you're in flight and my kiddo, he has a seizure? Where do I lay him down? Where do I sit him up? What about if he wants to take a nap, or what if the put on your seatbelt light comes on? Can somebody just give me a little scenario of how that would work, and just it would put me at ease and being able to at least have an idea of what to do if I were in that situation.
We've been pretty fortunate. Most of the times that we've flown, there's been 2 of us, so 2 adults, and so it works out better when it's a bigger plane and there's 3 seats in a row, and then, we can lay him out across us. He's 12 now, and he's almost as tall as me, so it does get very awkward when he's having a really convulsive seizure. He's sometimes pushing up against the seat in front of us, which is shaking it, and then I'm like, oh, please don't turn around. I don't need like a whole audience going on. It does get really awkward, but that's been a thing that's helped for us is, it's not always possible. We do some shorter flights where it's a 2 and 2, but being able to lift up the armrest and just making do with our best. When we did that medical travel trip to New York and we had to give him rescue meds, they didn't have Valtoco or Nasalem. We had Diastat. So, we had to, thankfully he was a lot smaller back then, but we had to very awkwardly give him Diastat on an airplane seat with, blankets trying to shield so people didn't know what's going on. But for the most part, that's kind of worked out for us. And we can, when he's post-ictal, we can get him to lay across us. Another lessons learned that we have come up with is we now utilize the help to get on the plane, because we learned the very hard way he had a particularly strong tonic-clonic, and it was a very short flight, and we landed and we're like, oh my God, we're trying to drag him off the plane, literally, and he's almost as tall as me. My husband hurt his back, so we were a mess. So now we just always utilize the aisle chair, because I don't want to take that chance again. We are also huge proponents of TSA Cares as well, so I want to plug that as well. My brother-in-law actually works for TSA, and he, has said, please utilize it. It's what it's there for. It's specially trained officers. Sometimes they're not the best, depending on the airport, at calling you back, when you arrange it online. So if you just call them, hey, we're coming in 48 hours or whatever, they're good about it. So I would just add that, because I know people have been frustrated that they didn't get a call back, depending on the airport.
I'm sorry. Are you sure? Hold on to it. We are 2 minutes over. It's a snack break. I see April has popcorn, so please, please go get a snack. If you had more questions, or Brian, jot your comment down that we want to make sure to add, because this is all so beneficial to even those of us that are, seasoned travelers, to be able to hear these things again. Meet us back here at 3:30, and we will start in with session 3.
All right, let's go ahead and get started. My name is Rich Maxey. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I hope everybody's snacked up and you have your things, got your popcorn. I want to do something a little different. I'd like each and every one of you to look around the room, look at one another, and I want you to think about how many of you have lost your friends because of Dravet. Just take a look around. Okay. Next question. How many of you are willing to help out a stranger around next to you? Show of hands. Okay. Now the last question. How many of you are willing to accept that help? No? My point of all this is, let me introduce you to your DSF family, one another. Everywhere around you, people are from different locations. People are in a different path on the same journey that we all have. One thing that, for me, to be able to step out that door, I have to think about who I'm going to see. I have to think about, my family. One of the things that we brought up earlier about, having your kids connect really got me thinking, because I'm going to throw Erin under the bus here. Mia, I think I've met Mia before I've met Erin. And she gives me inspiration. Every time I think about a conference, she's the first person that comes into my mind. I don't know why that is, but she was the one that hit me the hardest. And each and every one of you, you probably have a family that you kind of pay attention to. You may not know what their story is, what their journey is, but you learn to get to know their animals, their dogs, their service dogs. You get to know the children. You get to know the adults. You get to know the little things that they do, jumping around the room, the screeching. You get to know their patterns, and somehow you learn to love it in some cases. But it's just something to keep in mind, because the foundation is here for that very reason, to give you guys contacts. Wherever it is you're going, we have a fantastic forum. Exchange numbers. Shake hands with a stranger. Don't be a stranger. So those are really important things to kind of consider when you're ready to walk out that door and go on some sort of a journey. You're not alone. You actually have help. You just need to reach out and accept that help. So something to keep in mind. And now I'll get to bore you with some of the things I have to read. Bear with me here. I'm not a good public speaker. Oh, no, I'm not. In the face of Dravet, relentless changes, the decision to step out the door can feel like a monumental feat. Yet it is a choice that embodies the very essence of bravery and resilience. A choice that allows us to embrace hope and reclaim the joy that Dravet often takes from us. As we've explored, the journey with Dravet is a winding path filled with obstacles and detours. There will be times when the mere thought of venturing out seems insurmountable, impossible, when the risks and fears loom larger than life itself. It's in these moments that we must summon our inner strength, our vulnerabilities, and our authenticities Telling our stories is a powerful act of vulnerability that can forge connections and build trust within our communities. By sharing our experiences, we not only find solace, but we pave the way for others to understand the depth of our struggles and the magnitude of our triumphs. Preparation is key to navigating the world with Dravet. The development of packing lists and essential items you've shared are invaluable resources for families that can be added to your backpack. From rescue medications, cooling vests, hospital go bags, seizure response plans, all these practical measures empower us to face Dravet's intrusions with confidence and readiness. Yet preparation alone is not enough. It is the power of community that truly amplifies our resilience. By connecting with the DSF community, support groups, and family network programs, we gain access to a wealth of knowledge, resources, and shared experiences. These communities not only offer insights into accessible venues and events, but also provide a sense of belonging and understanding that can be profoundly healing. Ultimately, stepping out the door is a leap of faith, a choice to embrace vulnerability, to trust in our preparation, to lean on the strengths of our communities. It is a decision that requires immense courage, but one that holds the promise of potential growth, new experiences, and the reclamation of joy. As you ready yourself to embark on your journey, remember that bravery is not a constant state, but a series of ebbs and flows, which we've talked about. There will be days when the path seems impassable, and trust me when I tell you, it is okay. I cannot stress enough how many times Dravet is going to ruin the day. How much of it is ruined is really up to you. I can't practice what I preach at times. I'm there as well. We're all human. The world is not my oyster. However, I'm here, and so are all of you. So we've all taken that step. There's a lot of people online on different forums that have not. They choose not to travel. That's our job to step in and offer help to all those folks. On these days when the sun shines brighter and the path ahead seems clear, take that leap. Step out the door with confidence, armed with your preparation and the knowledge that you are not alone. Embrace the vulnerability, for it is those moments that true connection and growth can flourish. Remember, you have the power to choose joy, to reclaim the moments that Dravet steals from you. By stepping out the door, you're not only embarking on new adventures, but also inspiring others to follow in your footsteps, creating a ripple effect of hope and resilience that can transform lives. As we okay, now I'm starting to read things I'm not supposed to. Okay. I'd like to tell a little story of myself when I was young. My uncle, I really adored, and he did things, he was kind of a bit of a crazy man. He would go and do things, and I would just find like, oh, I want to do that too, you know. Jump off this, go jump off a rock into the water. He was kind of that adventure type of person that when you got back from whatever it was you were doing, he gets in trouble. And then you get the little bit of a look, and it's like, I'm just doing what he was doing. Well, we decided to go skiing. I've never been, and I was with him. We jumped on the lift. We went up to the very top. I was young, never skied before, and it took me a second to realize, I'm on top of this mountain, how am I getting down? And I looked over at him, and he knew exactly what he was doing. And he saw me, and he goes, you're gonna have to learn your way how to get down this hill now. I'm not suggesting that everybody does that. However, by the time I hit the bottom of that hill, I had an idea of how to ski. Sometimes you gotta put yourself in that position. You don't want to put yourself in a position to, if you're not comfortable and you know you're not comfortable, listen to yourself, but push yourself, because even though you're not comfortable, that's probably a good time to take that step forward and tackle that. So let me get into some of my questions. Next slide, please, for our panel. There we go. Okay, folks, when you go out into the community and participate, how does it feel to engage with others in the disability community?
In the disability community, it feels so relaxing and like home, like we are here. I don't know, for me, like in the disability, you mean in the community with just a disability? Okay, yeah, that's how I feel. At home, and that people understand, a little bit of what we're going through, and you don't get the weird looks.
Yeah, I'd say for us, the disability community is the DSF conferences, and whenever we get out to a special needs or a sensory kind of place. But yeah, it just feels like you're home. You don't have a social care in the world. Obviously, you'll still have your medical cares, but you just kick back, and your kid does something ridiculous. You look at someone else, they're cracking up along with you because their kid just did the same thing or something, right? So it's just liberating.
Yeah, I know some of us talked about baseball, and when we have that exact experience when we do a Spirit League, it's a chaos. It's a mess. We've got kids that they're trying to grab them back because another kid is swinging the bat. My kid is knocking over all the cones. You got some kids are just running laps around the bases, and everyone is just so being themselves, and no one feels like they have to, I'm sorry, apologize because their kid isn't, falling in line or doing it the right way. Like every parent there understands we're all laughing when, they're being funny, they're being themselves, and being able to have an outlet like that, a community that you can be a part of, and you can go to things like that or sensory events, or being here. No one's gonna bat an eye if a kid has a seizure or yells or tries to run out the door. We're all like, yep, yeah, we get it. And I think that is extremely invaluable.
How do you decide what opportunities are right for your child and family at the current point in your journey?
For us, it's been trial and error. It's a lot in the earlier years, we didn't do a whole lot of trial or error because we were afraid. But, as Mia's gotten older, we tend to do a lot of baby steps, or we just kind of talk about, okay, if, say we're going to the amusement park for the day, or like a day trip or something, we just kind of already know, things go south, just pack up and head home. And so for us, it's just been a lot of trial and error over the years. And Justin tends to push me more in some areas, and I tend to we kind of balance each other out sometimes, where things that would kind of make me more nervous, he's like, come on, let's go. And I know I have him, it's almost like, okay, we're together in this. It's not just me taking the kids out. We're together, you know what I mean? So that's helpful.
I think for us, there are things that we still won't do because we're not comfortable, but there are things that we're willing to try because we might have a different outcome. And so for us, it's that preparedness. How prepared are we to handle a seizure if it happens? Our son has never been to one of those, I don't even know the name of them because we don't have them where I'm from, but they're like indoor playgrounds, and that's like hard plastic. Those are like Disneyland to this kid. Like, he's from a small island in Southeast Alaska. That's like the coolest thing ever. We've never been to one in a mall, an airport, anywhere where he's not had a seizure that's resulted in medics. He's been seizure-free for over a year. We have a 2.5-hour layover in Seattle. I still won't take him to that. I'm still not comfortable enough because I know it probably is not going to end well, and I don't want to break that streak. So it just depends on the moment. We try, but we just have to think about like the next step with it's difficult.
A lot of times in a similar way, we prepare for the worst. And even think of like, what's the worst that can happen in this situation? We try to weigh the pros and cons of if we go to this, what are the pros? If we don't go, what are the cons? And we weigh that all out. Like sometimes it's not something we necessarily need to go to. It's not going to be anything great. We also try not to talk ourselves out of going. It's more, we try to have an honest look at that. The other thing, we often do is sometimes we split up, right? So if a neighbor's having a party, or if one of us wants to take, our neurotypical kid somewhere, and Vivi's having a bad day, one of us just stays home with Viv, and the other takes the other kid out, or does the other thing, and then we switch, right? But I think the important thing is, as you were saying, you have to take that uncomfortable step. You have to sometimes get down the ski hill. You got to do that in the beginning to prove that you can do it. But once you know you can do it, it's important to realize or to even understand if you have the energy to do that again today. And if you don't, it's okay to bail. You're not always going to have that energy. Just don't be lazy about it and say, I don't have the energy any day. Be honest with yourself.
I just want to add, like Melissa was saying, for us, it's water. We haven't really done any, like, a birthday party or an indoor water park, or even, like, we have Legoland passes, but he's never been to the water park. That's just something that water is a really big seizure trigger for him, and I just haven't gotten to a place where I feel comfortable handling it in that situation. We're lucky my parents live 4 houses down from us and have a pool. So, in that enclosed setting, we are able to handle water. But I haven't gotten to dealing with the larger public and water. But we very recently took a very big step, and we enrolled him in an indoor covered pool in a one-on-one adaptive swim lesson. So that was a big step for us. He absolutely loves swimming, of course. As we know, our kids tend to love the things that really don't love them back. That's always the case. But he's 12, and I just got to very recently where I feel comfortable with both my husband and I sitting on the side of the pool. It's a 20-minute session. It's temperature controlled. He has one person dedicated to him because he's not able to hold on to the instructor, so the person is with him the entire time. He's wearing a life vest. There's a lot of accommodations to make it possible, but for us, that was a really big leap. So even though there's other things we've done that to some people might seem like, wow, I don't know if I'll ever get there, there's other things that, it took us a really long time to finally get to that place where we feel even remotely like this is something that's possible.
Can you talk about a time in your journey when you've had to pull back or hold things up, cancel a trip? I know you've done that already. We can skip Morgan on that one. Talk about what you had to do. How do you start making those arrangements? How do you deal with that? When I heard that your family had to stay back, I was just thinking to myself, my God, how's that going to happen? They have to be up here. But you have to adapt. And all of us, Dravet will Dravet, and it'll blindside you, and you have to adapt. And that's what's great about this community is we're all here to help one another, to help adapt. So what are some of the things that you folks have done to prep yourself to cancel plans?
I'll jump in because it kind of ties into one of the questions that we had earlier as well, just balancing those expectations and when you don't get what you're needing from family or something. We have always had a really close family. Holidays were always at our house, and they were always 35 to 40 people. My mom always hosted, and then I took over hosting. We had Sunday family dinners. Every Sunday, everybody would come to our house. It was extended family. It was friends. We carried that on throughout. Then my son started having seizures, and seeing with your Dravet child, most of us have a Dravet child who, even if they just saw you 2 minutes ago, if you have been out of their eyesight for 2 minutes, you are the best thing that they've seen that entire day when they see you again. So imagine the excitement every Sunday for a child who has seizures that are triggered by excitement. So I had to let go of a lot of my expectations of how things were supposed to look. So we no longer, we do an unthanksgiving. We don't, that sounds horrible, but it's so much stress for me to prepare a giant Thanksgiving and to know that it probably is not going to end well. I'm going to be miserable. I'm going to be stressed out. So we just stopped putting those expectations on ourselves of having this picture-perfect celebration that is what it used to be, because it looks different for us now, and we had to become okay with that. And honestly, my husband probably prefers it because I'm not so stressed out. But all those things, just knowing that it's different, but you can make your own new traditions. We wear pajamas all day on Christmas, and we do brunch. My brother hates it. He thinks it's not okay because I didn't make a turkey. I tell him, if you want to bring a turkey, have it ready by 11 a.m. We'll be ready. Show up in your pajamas. I'm okay with that. So just changing, just kind of getting to the part where everything doesn't have to be picture perfect. It doesn't have to be a storybook. It's okay to just have something that makes you happy.
Thank you.
And to kind of piggyback on what you're saying, I think in the earlier years, I just felt the need to just keep things kind of normal, whatever that is, And we would go to the beach because that's what we did growing up, and we're going to go to the beach with our kids for a week every summer. So we did that for like 3 summers in a row, and Mia, for whatever, water was a huge trigger, especially the ocean, and of course it's her favorite place. But she would go into status seizures every time, and we had a year where, there was no cell reception. We, didn't think, oh, well, maybe we should go to a beach where there's lifeguards, Oh my gosh. So anyway, so, she's seizing, and I've got Hannah, who's like maybe 2 or 3. Mia's maybe 4, and Hannah's grabbing me, Mommy. I'm running away from the beach to try to find a cell signal with with her grabbing me, and then Justin's at the beach with like the other 2 people that were on the beach. They're like trying to help, and it took forever just to get a signal, and it took us going through that. That was the last, week beach trip, and we finally I came to this epiphany, we don't have to do that every year. And I just had to mourn the loss of, at least at that time in our life, we don't need to go to the beach. And we didn't go to the beach with Mia for a couple years after that. And we ended up just doing weekend little trips that were closer by. And we just tried to find things that were fun for us that were more manageable at the time. And I just felt like I could breathe and not think, oh my gosh, if I don't take my kids to the beach for a week, I'm going to disappoint them, especially Mia's sister, who's missing out on going to the beach and then I got into a routine where I would take her to the beach for a weekend, just the 2 of us, and we had our thing, and she did whatever she wanted. She ate, she picked what we ate, what we did, and anyway, fast forward to now, we go to the beach because, thankfully that's not a trigger for Mia. Right now, we're going in a week, but, it doesn't mean that it's not going to ever happen again, but sometimes it won't be now, but let's find something that we can do together as a family and still have a great time. And maybe down the road we'll try. And the way we revisited was just going for the day. We drove 3 hours to the beach. She did it, and we literally I just cried. I was like, she's there, and she's on the beach, and we're not, she's not seizing. And so all that to say, baby steps, and remember, if it's not right now, it could be, something in the future that you could try again.
So to add 2 really quick points. One with the whole idea of changing up holidays. I know that's not quite the topic, but with Christmas, Vivi takes everything off the Christmas tree. So then at one point, my mother-in-law made little soft ornaments because we had my grandma's old glass ones and all. She takes those off as well. So now we mostly just have a bare tree. It's kind of depressing, fake one too. But I just started to take a lot of Vivi rips up cardboard and stuff, and I would toss that on the tree. Now, myself and my other daughter, Adele, think that's hilarious, and we love it. My wife hates it. But, it's just that adapting to it. But on a actual practical matter of being prepared for these plan changes, especially when you're in that situation where a seizure means a trip to the hospital, almost any ticket you buy, whether it's a concert ticket, plane ticket, anything, they almost all have trip insurance. And almost every time, and double check though, that trip insurance includes medical emergency for you or someone in your family. So that was one of those things we always used to check off, yes, I'll buy the trip insurance or the ticket insurance so that you get some or most of your money back. It just gives you that peace of mind because you're panicking. I have this event I'm going to get to go to, but I know in the back of my head something might pop up. At least you're not going to get the financial hit if it doesn't happen. Right, so it's definitely good to look into what that covers if you're going to do anything like that, including air flights, right, because they cover that too.
And getting back to friends and activities and parties, we've all been there, we've all done it. How do you cope with it? What do you folks do to deal with the invitations that aren't there anymore?
I'll go first because I thought of this one a lot. And you all hesitated anyway. So my wife and I both tend to be in the camp of having a few really close friends as opposed to a lot of like acquaintances. So in that way, we're fortunate because all of our close friends understand it. However, it doesn't make going to their house any bit easier because, again, if we're taking Vivi, unless we're doing a piggyback swap where we take turns going, Vivi will explore every nook and cranny of their house. So what that's done to us is we've just changed it and we invite people over. We never have large gatherings anyway, or we rarely do. And most people understand, right? That they try to say to us, oh, it's fine, you can have her over. But it's just one of us chasing after Vivi after another. If we just have people to our house, it's carefree. Vivi's going to go do her thing. She has her safe zones. We know exactly where she is and what she's getting into. We have everything locked down. So that just makes up for it. So I can't really speak to stop getting invited. I think the people who we've hung out once or twice and never saw again probably wasn't going to work it out anyway. So it's no big loss for us at that side.
We haven't really experienced, I mean, we have experienced the no longer being invited, but more just like things changing when you are invited, and sometimes just really having to weigh if it was worth going. So for us, I think of a tradition. My friend always did a kids cookie decorating thing at Christmas. And again, my son was going through a hard time with overexcitement being a trigger. And so every single time we'd go, for one, they're just running. He's running the whole time. So it's not really enjoyable for you a lot of times to do these things, and you're in somebody else's house and they're touching their things, and they've got this beautiful tree up that isn't decorated with cardboard. And so it's stressful. Well, I had to kind of really look at it like, what do I want the event to be? Do I want it to be something that they enjoy and I just know that I'm going to just get through it? Or what does it look like? And so for us, we kind of started as Owen got a little bit older, we started making sure the kids knew if they weren't super close with us, the families, because a lot of times it would be our girlfriend arranging it, kids there, and then other kids, like their kids' friends, or their friends' kids. And so what we would do a lot of times is just like, hey, this is, Owen, he might have a seizure. He's okay to play in the playroom, but you guys need to know, come get one of us if it happens. And it started getting to the point where like he could play a little bit, and I still was checking on him every few minutes because that was my comfort level at that time. But we then had those extra set of eyes, and what it did was create this kind of natural network of people that were watching him and wanting to be a part of it. And we've actually had 2 people come up to us that their kids are teenagers. He's had seizures around them, and they knew what to do. And we've had 2 kids come up to us as teenagers that had been in a social situation where another child had had a seizure, and they knew what to do because we'd had that conversation with them about Owen, and they weren't scared, and they were able to help others around them not be scared. And so for us, it's just really, again, that comfortability. We do still get, those moments where we're not necessarily getting invited, as our son has struggled with behavior more. He might not have been invited to the birthday party or known how to participate. As they get a little older, it can be difficult. I mean, I'll be honest, my son has a one-to-one para at school. He has a hard time with friends because I don't know, when I was a 5th grader, I didn't want to hang out with the kid that had the adult with them all the time. So that's a struggle, and I think it's the same for birthday parties and those kind of things. So we just do the best we can.
Are we skipping? Yeah, we can open it up for other questions out there for sure.
I'll just quickly say the last question what was the catalyst to get us out the door? And I wanted to give my 2-word answer, my wife.
All right, perfect. Thanks. This has been wonderful. This is our first time at a DSF conference and just kind of tapping into the community as well. The information on taking care of our Dravet warriors has been unbelievable and wonderful. But I have questions specific to, just as you all have talked about your respective partners and your, we've got our VIP SIBs who are running around the Mall of America right now. I feel like we felt so fractured in this first 3 years of her life, and we're putting the pieces of that together. But just strategies, tips from the panel or from anyone who's been going through this for a longer time, but just how to mend that and kind of find that family structure and family unit and find time for one another has been a challenge for us, and just looking for tips and strategies on that.
I'll speak to that. I feel like over the years I've learned, and if I could tell myself earlier on what I know now, I would have been much better off, but you learn, right? So for me, it was learning how to have grace for myself. As a mother or father, we put pressure on ourselves as parents anyway, right? And then if you have more than one child and they're affected by the mayhem and the chaos that goes with your child who has all these medical emergencies constantly. And I think getting help for myself and also for our marriage was huge for us. It was hard to just get ourselves to that point because we were so busy in the thick of it, having 2 kids under 3. But I think that helped start our journey in a better direction and learning how to just take things as they come and work together as a team, and just not, like we've been talking about, the expectations, not having this set, this is how we need to be, but just, where are we? And sometimes it's just, that week, we were gonna go to XYZ. We're all beat. Mia's having an off day. We're not gonna go. You know what I mean? And not feel bad about it. I don't know if that makes sense, but I feel like for us, it was just, I don't know, trying to do things more simply and having an in date and ordering Chinese when the kids are finally in bed, watching a movie, just keep it simple to start and not feel pressure to have to go out on dates all the time because, yeah. So that's helped us over the years for sure.
One thing I think that, I don't know if you also have other children, but one thing that is important to us is that, and I think Dravet Syndrome, the DSF does an amazing job at supporting the siblings. It's been really difficult through our journey to make sure that everything is naturally centered around your child with Dravet. It just happens. I mean, if you have to call the ambulance shows up. It naturally happens, but how can you create those other moments where your other children feel special? And then the other part of it, and we're big on humor, nobody else is going to get it, so lean on each other. It's not easy. There's no picture perfect answer that is going to be easy, but I think just remembering that there is so much joy and humor in this life too, even when things are really difficult. And we take advantage. This is the first time my 8-year-old has got to come to the sibling camp, and seeing how much attention they get and how it's about them, especially, like I mentioned earlier, we travel for medical. Can you imagine being the sibling of the kid that gets to go to Seattle every 3 months for a trip for 2 days? Ooh, fun. Trying to make that exciting for my other kids, that's difficult. So just trying to find those moments where you can kind of center things around the other parts of the family, and where it doesn't have to just be about Dravet, and about those moments is special.
Yeah, I'll add to that. We are fortunate that my son has a nurse who comes, we've had her, she's a unicorn, we've had her for many years, and she helps care for him, and we take advantage. Most of the time she goes to school with him, so, it's not really respite, but there's other times when he's not in school, and we try to take advantage of, my daughter's name is Taylor, so we call it Tay Dates, so sometimes we take her and we do stuff that we wouldn't normally do with him. And like you were saying, she gets to pick whatever we eat, whatever movie we see, and it's all about her. Obviously, sometimes if we have help with her as well, we also try to utilize respite or nursing hours to be able to get some time just the two of us. Or sometimes it's like we have been in such a hectic time period, we're not able to actually get out in a way. So like they're saying at night after he goes to bed, my husband and I love Survivor. We're on like our, I don't know how many seasons we've watched. It's our thing. We look forward to it. Sometimes that's Jeff Probst is all that gets me through the day because I'm like, I just got to hang on until I can get him in bed. And we have snacks that the kids don't have, you know, the secret parent snacks, and we watch Survivor, and, you know, it's low key, but it's time for us to bond and completely not think about Dravet and caregiving, except for he rudely interrupts with seizures often, but sometimes we have to pause Jeff and, you know, go take care of him, but then we come back. And so I think like it still speaks to the like setting your expectations. I had a different idea before Dravet entered my life of what I thought we were going to be traveling as a family more. I thought we were going to be traveling as a couple more. I thought, you know, that things were going to look very different, and it's taken a long time to get here, but I've really had to kind of change my mindset, appreciate some of the smaller moments like our nightly Survivor and, you know, whatever like release that we can find that helps us connect to each other and disconnect from Dravet.
I just want to add one more quick thing that the two of us, Justin and I, started maybe when Mia was, I don't know, 5 or 6, but we should have started earlier. But whenever we were together, just the two of us, we could just, if we were going on a date, random date or whatever, we'd get out, we'd take a minute and just get out what we need to get out about the kids. And then that's it. No more talking about the kids while we're out on this date. And we didn't really have a lot to talk about at first, but you know what I mean? It's like, that's all you talk about. Oh my gosh. So, but yeah, it's helped a lot, and we still do that. Like at night, you know, when the kids are in bed and we're just watching TV. Yeah, how was your day at work? Like, would you know, and just talk to each other. And the kid stuff is, you know, we talk about that at a different time, but when it's our time, we don't. So that helps us.
I would also add that one of the important things to do is talk about your feelings and fears about Dravet. When Vivian was 8 months old, she had another one of these status seizures in between all the Diastat rescue med and the seizure. It was the first time she stopped breathing and had to be resuscitated. And after that event happened, my wife and I were talking, and I was like, I hate to say this, but if she's going to die from this, I want her to die now, before she becomes much more of a human being and much more of a personality. Like an 8-month-old isn't much of a person still, right? They don't have that personality. And it was a real limb that I went on to say that to her. And she was like, oh my God, I was thinking the same thing, right? So you have to be able to share your, because you're both scared. Like both people in the relationship are very scared. And we all, in general, in relationships, generally don't do a great job communicating. But this is like a middle ground where you're not talking about my feelings about you or me. But this is like about Dravet. So have those frank conversations. And if you do have another kid, we found that our daughter was able to deal with it more if we had her involved in it. So every time Vivi had a seizure, she would go grab the rescue med and a little blanket for her thing, and she became part of it. And it wasn't something that was hidden from her. It wasn't something that she feared, because she now felt, I'm helping the situation. So I think just making it, just keeping it all out and in the open, at least within the family, is an important step to not having it put walls up between anybody.
If I could add to that, you got to remain a team. You are in it together. If you're going, there's going to be times where you're angry. There's going to be times when you're sad. You're going to find patience in that, and you can be mad at Dravet. Don't be mad at each other. Don't be mad at your family. Be mad at Dravet. And just keep that in mind.
Hey, another comment on that. So, I don't know if you heard the phrase, you can't pour from an empty cup. So you got to prioritize your own happiness too. And part of that, if you have other kids in the house too, is showing them how to deal with these challenges in a healthy manner. So I don't know about the rest of you, but I think one of my de facto emotions is anger. It's really easy to get to. So I'm working on it. You know, so we all have something we're working on. But with the relationships that you have in your house, if you're waiting to find the moment, you're not going to find the moment. You got to make the moment. So take advantage of whatever time you have to, to love your wife.
And I'll just add, if you're having a lot of these anger issues or emotional issues with it, go get therapy or get on something, right? There's nothing wrong with it. You need to take care of yourself. You need to be there, and you need to be lovable and give love to the others around you. So do it. It's been one of the best things I ever did was finally getting some therapy and stuff. So by all means.
I have a question talking about how to include siblings. We have a 2.5-year-old and have had lots of discussions on when or if we should add to our family. If anyone has any insight on their experience with that, we would appreciate it.
You want to take
it? Were you saying like having more kids or? Yeah. Okay.
Should we have another one?
Always yes.
We're all looking at each other like, what?
Mom of 4 boys, I'll take this one. So again, we have 2 older boys and 2 younger. So our Dravet child is 11 and our youngest is 8. And he was the blessing that we didn't know we needed. However, we were very prepared for that. We did undergo, before we had Owen's diagnosis, genetic diagnosis, we did do some significant genetic testing with my pregnancy to make sure, because at that point, we didn't know what it was that he had. He was 2.5 and he was having seizures, but we didn't know it was Dravet yet. So we did do genetic testing. We did become as prepared as we could to see if there was anything that we potentially would be needing to be aware of if he was going to have special needs, anything, seizures. But we don't regret it for a day. Like I would always advocate, I don't think I was prepared for any of my children. And I have 4, so yes, there's things that you can do to be prepared to be more comfortable with it, but absolutely, I think there's lots of families that have had children after their Dravet child and are just fine with it and would consider it a blessing.
We took the selfish way out just because it was our second kid with Dravet, and it was, by the time things settled down, it was like 4 or 5 years later, and we couldn't think about going back to diapers and no sleep again, so that's what ended that for us.
Yeah, this is a tough question. I get asked this a lot. What? It is. It's a hard question because it's very personal. I work in genetics, and a lot of people want to talk about the genetic side of it, and I'm always like, I'm not a genetic counselor. I'm not qualified to counsel you through this very big decision, but I can share personally, I always wanted more than one child. My son with Dravet came along, and that didn't change things for me. I wanted him to have a sibling. That was even more important than ever, and she was a little bit of a happy surprise the way that it happened. And in our particular situation, he was different when he was younger, and she was born. And for the first 6 months of her life, he was doing okay, and then he fell off a cliff, and things got way worse. And I always think about if she didn't come along, would I have done it? I don't know because things got so bad with him, I don't know if I would have. And I think about that constantly because she is such a light to our lives. He loves her so much, and she loves him, and I can't imagine our lives without her. And so I'm glad that I didn't take too long, and the decision was taken a little bit out of my hands, but I'm just thankful that it happened the way that it did, because now I can't imagine my life without her. And she's 9, and she's also very helpful, so that's been a side benefit to having a helpful child is she assists, and yeah.
I'm not going to talk about the genetic part because you can talk to a doctor and do all that stuff. So Will is my middle child with Dravet. We had a typical child first. My husband's in the Air Force, and he missed out on birth to 6 months and then 18 months to 2 with our first child. Then he came home, and deployment homecoming surprise is Mr. Will. And he had his first seizure at 3 months old, and that was never even on my radar to have another kid. And then we moved home and had some more support, and then COVID happened, and I was thinking about all the things that I missed out on with what was going to be my last baby. Like, I forgot what it was like to not hope that you're going to see those milestones, but know that you're going to see those milestones, and how much he had missed, because he had missed all the typical stuff. And I just really, and I'm sure everybody in this room has so much trauma thinking you're handed a healthy baby and then you're not. And we collectively decided he did not, he was done. Dravet had kind of did him in, and I got him on board, and we had COVID. We had our Charlotte, who, funny enough, I had forgotten that Dr. Gervais' first name was Charlotte. And to kind of echo Morgan, like, my daughter is the most resilient, incredible sister. She's only 3, and she knows what a seizure is. I don't, do it. Do it. With consent. Seriously, there is so much trauma, but there is also so much healing in having a typical child after Dravet, and I'm sure everybody who has had a typical child after Dravet, I mean, my Dravet child is beautiful, you know, I wouldn't take him back, but to have a typical child after hospital stay after hospital stay after hospital stay and know that she's gonna hit those milestones, she's surpassed him now, and that's okay. They drive each other crazy, they're best friends, but they kind of have a typical sibling relationship, and it's really cool. So yeah, she's a little bit of a bully, but.
I will also quickly, as I'm walking to our next question. We had a child after our son with Dravet, and I will say from a personal note, I was prone to postpartum depression to begin with, because I had it even with my son prior to seizures. So something that I was very, very transparent with my doctors was saying, hey, I live in a very medically complex household. I have a feeling that I'm really going to struggle with postpartum depression due to the fact of that very complex newborn age that we had with our son. And so it was very much on my radar. And so then I very quickly realized, because there was a day that I couldn't even look at her, because all of those twitches were very, very scary. And within a week, I was then taking antidepressants and anti-anxiety medication so that I could do that. So I just want to add that. And then I also want to add that it's okay if you don't have more than one. That's also a beautiful choice too, where you can live a beautifully fulfilled family life as well. So if children aren't your choice, then that's okay too. So it's really up to you and your family and what you feel is best for you. Or just do it, whatever.
It's always what I say.
Well.
It would be difficult to offer advice, but my Dravet daughter Anna is the 4th of 5, and one thing I was thinking, I had a very typical dad Dravet conference session. I got 3 texts during the session. I need you now was one of them. And so I've been in and out a lot, but I just wanted to say thanks to the presenters. I've really learned a lot. But one thing that I noticed when I was here for it was there were a lot of, life hacks, like, oh, Dravet is very difficult, and it's hard to go outdoors, and what are some life hacks? And I think one thing I would urge you to think about as you think about children is their capacity to register the depth and the dignity of every human life, especially their siblings. And we, as adults, are dealing on the front lines of packing bags and seizures. And our vision for that thing is lost in the shuffle. But the having of siblings, if it's an opportunity for you, it teaches how to witness the beauty of the life of the child with Dravet. And in the small society of the family, it's so intimate and personal and cherishing to have that. And as a dad, husband, I feel that I'm always being taught by my children about how to properly be in love with my daughter who has Dravet. Not what you might have expected, but that is not something that I had found my way to prior to having Dravet, because I thought I was supposed to be wise and in charge. And so the children have this capacity that I gained from them. And I'm very grateful to them for that. If you get what I'm driving at, I don't know. It's this sense of witnessing a person that you love regardless. And the kids are just great at that. And of course, there's all the stuff that's hard and, it's unique to the child who's a sibling with Dravet. But if we were to reframe just a little bit of today's discussion, as coping or dealing or managing, there is this other side of Dravet, which is gift to the family and to the person who has the patience to love it for the entire life of it. And I just wanted to say that I think the family is not the only, but a particularly strong way to register that love.
We have time for one more.
Rock, paper, scissors?
I was just going to add, everything everybody has said is so beautiful, and I agree wholeheartedly with all of it. I think our Nathan, our warrior, was our first child, and our second little one, when we were able to have him, has brought so much joy into our home, and I think a lot of peace of mind. I think any parent, whether your child is neurotypical, whether you're going through Dravet or anything like that, you sometimes look at your child's faults and say, is that my fault? I'm not talking necessarily here about the seizures. We all know that's Dravet's fault, but there are certain behaviors with my older son where we'd be like, what is wrong with us? Why can't we get him to do X or Y or Z? And one thing that's helpful in healing with that, of course, is being in a room with everybody here and talking to everybody else, going, oh, you deal with it too? Okay. Maybe it's not us, but another has been having a neurotypical child and watching and going, oh, you mean this shouldn't have been a fight? Okay. And I think that's healing too, and we've been very grateful for it.
Thank you so much for that.
Just to wrap up the session, folks, keep in mind, you saw everybody raise their hand willing to help. Make use of that. You are here, so let's give yourself a round of applause for making it.
Excuse me, I need to adjust the mic down here now. Now that we've presented all 3 sessions, we're curious to see if you feel a little more empowered to explore a little more. We're going to ask you again, and this is on the back of your thought catcher, on the spectrum of comfortability of leaving your home with your Dravet warrior, where would you rate yourself now? So just take a moment to do that, if it's changed at all or if you still feel you are in the same position. At this time, we're going to move into our breakout sessions. So I'd like for you to gather, join some of your groups together a little bit more. And we want you to get together in groups and share where you fall on your rating scale. We want you to share your stories and more of your personal experiences, share your resources, and share your ideas for activities and experiences. On your table is the image of a backpack. Please write something that you pack in your backpack. It can be literal or figurative. What do you make sure to always pack with you, or what do you want to start packing with you? At the end of the workshop, we hope to be able to post these on the wall just outside the hall near the dinner buffet when we're done here. We just need to find adhesive. We have about, we can have some time for this. We're going to take about 20 minutes for the breakout session before we join together for our final thoughts and last discussion. So go ahead and join together in groups. If you are sitting just one or two at a table, gather up a little bit more, maybe someone in your region, or just another empty chair that you can grab. But join together, and then we will have time after the breakout sessions for anyone to share out things that they would like to.
So I really hope that you had the opportunity to come up with some new thoughts and share some new ideas. If my panel wants to sit in the audience, you can. If you'd like to come back up here, you absolutely may. But we're going to move into open discussion. I'd love it if you would share maybe something that was that came up that was particularly impactful for you, maybe at your table, or something that was unexpected that somebody might have written in their on their backpack of things that they carry. Amy. Oh, hang on, Amy, hang on. For the recording and the live, I do have to have you have the microphone. I won't make you run up to get it.
Bye, April, I love you. Our group was talking about just flying with our children, because that's something we've never done. My son's super impulsive, and Bridget was talking about how they did fly with their son to come here, and he reached for the... He tried to open the door on the airline, and so we were talking about that. So I mentioned TSA Cares because I am aware of that. So that was new to some of the families here. So we got to share that. And then another mom mentioned helicopter insurance. So none of us had heard about that. So that was very interesting too.
Did you say helicopter insurance?
Yeah, I'm going to pass the mic so she can explain it.
Yeah, we have that. Yes.
You guys have it?
We live in Idaho, so it's pretty rural. So anytime we get out of the city, we are being life flighted somewhere. So yes.
So I feel like you should talk about it because I don't have it. So you know more about it. I've just heard about it this weekend.
So it's helicopter life flight insurance, where if you are in any area where you need to be medevaced, whether that's rural or even in city limits, you can add this policy. It's typically through the life flight companies that you basically get a frequent flyer card, so to speak, where they will give you this extra insurance that will cover the cost or the majority of the cost of that life flight. So we live in Idaho, which isn't quite as remote as, Southeast Alaska. But it doesn't take very long for us to get into a place where the only way to transport is via helicopter. And on top of that, we also have a satellite communicator that we also bring with us when we do go into those more rural areas, that we have designated contacts within it that we can very quickly send a prescribed text that we have set up that says, "We're good, but send help," or "Emergency 911," or "Made it to our destination," just so that we can quickly get that information out to our network that needs to know where we are and how we're doing. And it also has an immediate satellite response to send paramedics and emergency people, responders. So yes, if you're traveling in rural areas, or if you're not traveling in rural areas, helicopter insurance is definitely something that you could consider as an add-on.
I don't have experience with this program, but I've heard about it in my disability community too. Thinking of if you are wanting to try traveling with your child, there is an organization called Wings for Autism, Wings for All. And they, from what my understanding is, you have to look into it a little bit more for yourself, but it is helping to alleviate the stress. And so sometimes they'll do a day where they simulate what it's like to go through the process of getting on a plane, and so that the family and the child can go through that experience of what it's like to sit in this seat, or what it's like to board, and what it's like to be in this container and to have to buckle up and be next to the window. So that was a resource that made me think of, if you are wanting to travel with your child and haven't yet done that, that's an opportunity to get some experience and to almost build a social scenario or a social script up for your child. Wings for Autism, or Wings for All. I quickly Googled it, and it led me to thearc.org, which they must have a partnership with them on that.
Go for it. Number 5.
Just wanted to mention also, one of the moms that had to leave already had mentioned, I think it was Autism at Sea.
Autism on the Seas.
Autism on the Seas. And so it is a resource for people that are doing cruises, et cetera. So that's another one to write down that April mentioned before she had to step out.
Autism on the Seas, and that was a recommendation from one of our parents that I have known for a million years. They are pretty extensive travelers, and so that's definitely something to look into. Autism on the Seas.
And I don't know if it's there's a resort that has a whole special news. Was it Sandal? Who is that? That's
Is it Beaches?
Beaches, yeah. I think Beaches is a resort that does a lot with special needs kids and all. And one last resource to look into is, if you're going to go somewhere and you might want a night out, always go on care.com and look for nurses in the area, if you're comfortable with that, who might be able to watch your kid and do seizure interlopement if that happens, because it might just get you one night out while you're out with your kid.
Do you have to have a diagnosis of autism to participate for Autism on the Sea? Do you know that?
I do not know.
Another resource families might not know about is Icing Smiles. So, okay, perfect.
We have a parent sharing that you only need to have a disability to qualify for Autism on the Seas. You do have to have a disability, but it doesn't necessarily have to be autism. Any other thoughts or ahas or something that may have surprised you?
I guess you did see me sort of raise my hand. Hi, my name is Doris, and I'm actually a Dravet grandma who's also, unfortunately, a pediatric nurse practitioner with experience in child neurology. However, my experience is 20 years old, so they never had kids that were genetically tested back then. And I can think of a couple of clients in my head now that I wonder if they should get tested. So anyway, one of my takeaways from this conference, especially the clinical side, was my biggest concern for my 2.5-year-old granddaughter who has Dravet, was she may end up needing to get onto fenfluramine. I lived in the 90s. I remember that time. I remember how dangerous that drug was and how many people ended up with lung transplants. Mm-hmm. So I was a hard no as far as that was concerned. And coming in here, that was one of the best things that I was able to find out. Yeah. It opened my eyes. It lets me know that in clinical trials, they did have they had a handful of kids, about 25% I found out from the company, that were under the age of 5. So, and they did look at that as a marker, and that there was nothing there during the trials, and that currently, definitely, they're all being monitored and stuff, and so far nothing has come up. So that was my biggest take from here. Aside from meeting all these wonderful people, these parents, I have always been a special needs advocate in all my life as a pediatric nurse practitioner. And so you guys, I just want to give you a great big hug and say thank you for everything you do for your children. God only gives special people children with special needs.
Thank you.
There were a couple other resources that Austin and I were jotting down that we didn't aha to when we were doing our presentation. One is called parenttoparent.org, and that is emotional support for families with disabilities, and it connects you. If you're not connected in your local disability community, that might be a good way to start. We also have the ARC.org, is also kind of how we're connected to a parent to parent, but that way you can get connected to resources in your area. You could get connected to somebody who maybe is more knowledgeable about the IEP process in schools, who knows about your state resources. So take a look and explore your state on parenttoparent.org. We didn't talk a ton about it, but we did talk a little bit about siblings and how important their experiences are. You can look up on sibshops.org to see if you have sibshops organizations in your area. My 8-year-old participates at Seattle Children's Hospital. Every other month, she gets to go and be with other siblings of children with disabilities, of siblings with disabilities, and they get to have special, they get to go into the cafeteria and get whatever they want it's actually at Children's Hospital, but they get to have all sorts of activities. They talk a little bit about kind of feelings and what it's like to be a sibling to a child with, to another sibling with disabilities, but it's another time to focus all about them. Also, from our Dravet Foundation organization, last year we hosted a webinar on a virtual webinar called Inspiration and Preparation for Traveling with Dravet. So you can go to YouTube and Google, go into the YouTube search engine and type in Dravet and travel, and you'll see that Inspiration and Preparation for Traveling with Dravet. And we had 2 really phenomenal guest speakers who also were really inspiring and gave, made me feel more empowered about traveling with our family. One of the other things is going back to session 1, we talked a lot about telling your story and kind of how to do that, how you get started if you're in the last couple of years of diagnosis. And Dravet Foundation did a webinar with Julia Campbell of Nonprofit Nation podcast. And so if you go to our Dravet Stories section on our website, there's links to those webinars as well.
I gotta mention one more resource that we've been all forgetting about is your local regional Dravet group on Facebook. So we have the different regions, which most of us represent here, Mountain Region, Eastern, Northeastern, right, whatever they all are. As you've all seen here, everyone's sharing things, everyone's bringing up other bits of information that everybody wants to know about. Of course, there's the general Dravet group, but when you're looking for something a little more localized, or maybe you don't want to put it out into the big group for fear of getting way too much feedback, right? Please make sure you participate. If it's a question or an idea that's on your mind, it's either a question someone else has or it's some information you could share that's going to help somebody else. So.
Is there anyone here who's not in our Facebook support groups? Are you all in your region? And can I just ask, are you just not on Facebook? No social media. So I can understand that.
Wrong answer, Rich. Wrong answer.
We do have families that create a profile just so they can strictly get into our support groups, because it really is. We absolutely respect the boundaries that people have with social media. It can be a blessing and a curse, but we also do, just so you know, we do have many people that create profiles simply just to access our support groups.
Yes.
So just a little thought, you can always reach out to Austin at dravetfoundation.org, and she can help you navigate that if that's something that you feel led to do, just to be more connected to our big support group, as well as, like Brian mentioned, the really phenomenal regional support groups.
And I will also mention that I personally review 99% of the requests to join the Facebook groups. And I go through a minimum of 18 different points of data to ensure that the people in our group, or to do the best that I can to ensure that the people in our group are where they need to be. So we take, as a foundation, the safety and security of our online support groups very, very seriously. And so we do absolutely everything we can to maintain the privacy and the safety of our groups. So if there's anyone that is hesitant to do that social media piece, we absolutely respect and understand that that is your boundary and that is okay. But I do want you to know that we do everything we can as a foundation to make it as safe as possible. There are always going to be people that slip through the cracks. However, it is very rare, and when we do get alerted to it, we address it immediately. And also, thanks, Brian, for the plug for your regional groups. Please check it out.
Just one more thing. We're talking about taking that step. Same thing with Facebook or social media. Don't be afraid to just write a post. Nobody's going to raise you. Nobody's going to light fires. There's no stupid questions. Search for it. Don't forget that the search feature is there, because there's a lot of information there. But don't be afraid to post. And if you are, but you really want help, contact one of us. We will help
Please
you through
do.
it.
Yeah, absolutely. Great point. Thanks, Rich.
Any final questions? Share out of resources? Any comments to share before we leave here today?
One in the back.
I actually learned about this on the Family Network Facebook, so many of you may already know. There's a woman who posts about travel and adventures called Accessible Adventures. Her son has LGS, and their Make-A-Wish was to get a camper, and they just travel around, but they blog about like national parks and state parks that have wheelchairs for rent and mobility things, and so I find a lot of inspiration out of them. So just another resource. Accessible Adventures.
And you qualify
She's on
for Make-A-Wish.
Instagram at Accessible Adventures. And Facebook. And she has, talking about Facebook groups, she has her own Facebook group too, where people share their different adventures. She was one of the panelists, like she mentioned, on our inspiration and preparation for traveling with Dravet, and it was just a really great thing to have her included.
Okay. None of today's presentation is to say that you should go on a cross-country road trip or fly halfway around the world and live in a foreign country for a month. And I know what it is like to feel like going to the dentist or to school or even your backyard feels as though it may as well be 3,500 miles away. I get it. Sometimes taking one step feels the same as trying to get to the moon and back. But I'm going to ask you and remind myself and all of us to be brave. I'm going to ask you to move, even if it feels like it's only one step. You got this. You're strong. You've got more tools than you know in that backpack. Tools that are way more cool than any silly Swiss Army knife. Plus, when you look around this room and this conference, you have guides around you that have walked the terrain that looks very much like yours. You have a vast community around you that is walking the same trail system that you are. So hoist that backpack. We know it's heavy, but we hope that the hope that you packed makes it feel just a little bit lighter. We've got our packs too, and more importantly, we'll hike with you. Thank you.